So welcome everyone. Second time around for today. Completely different sides of the globe. First, I spoke to the US. This time it's Australia. I'm talking to Matt. We spoke before. Matt was actually one of my first guests when I started doing this. Back then, I used Skype and recorded it, and then later posted it on YouTube. And then I found out that a lot of the conversations I had were completely ruined by the software that was recording the talks. And among that was the talk that I had with Matt. And I don't remember everything from that one, but what I do know is that that was absolutely, for me, the worst one to lose, because I thought we had a great talk. And I recently hooked up with Matt again, and we decided to do it over because both of us can't really remember what we did and didn't cover in the talk that we had. So Matt, welcome. Good to have you back. Can you do a short introduction of yourself and then tell us what you believe and why you believe it?
Yeah, so I'm Matt. I'm in my mid-20s and I'm Australian. So yeah, I suppose I live in like a kind of a middlingly large country town, and I have all my life. I've always been interested in kind of I love science. I love just learning, and I've been doing that for basically all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I am a Christian. So I believe that there is a God and that, the world was created some billions of years ago. Now that's a bit contentious nowadays, but I can't really, one of the reasons I believe this is because I can't really see any other conclusion with the evidence I've given. I can kind of understand how some atheists can say, no, I can definitely understand how some agnostics can say, well, I can't really make a decision. But the more information that we get, and we have a lot of information now, I suppose I haven't really seen anything more recently that kind of contradicts it. Not really.
Okay. So, but can I ask why you would think that it needs to be contradicted first? Shouldn't it be the other way? Shouldn't it be the other way around, that you should have some indicative evidence for a God first?
Yeah, I can see why you might make that might ask that, but well, the way I said, there is already a fair bit of evidence. Like, for example, one of the big questions that really kind of gets me on this is like, why do we even have anything? Like, why does the universe exist? It can't create itself. I know certain scientists have claimed that it can create itself, but it really seems to me that they're trying to kind of wiggle their way out of actually trying to address the question. So, for example, Stephen Hawking's said, what was it? Because the law of gravity exists, the universe can and will create itself. Now, that is probably one of the worst things he has ever said, because it's definitely not true. The law of gravity does not have any causative power. It's almost the law of gravity. It's like it's our description of the universe, right? And we call it a law because, I mean, as far as everything that science tells us says that yes, the law of gravity is true. I mean, we're sitting here on a planet, we're being pulled down by the force of gravity. It's true, right? But it doesn't have causative power to create a universe. It's like saying numbers can, cause things. They can't, because they're abstract.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I would agree. I'm not quite sure about the quote that you just used from Stephen Hawking. But what I do know that is if you have gravity present, it at least will make up um, for planets, for suns to exist.
Oh yeah, totally.
So
But
when you talk about
mm,
creation, I still have no reason to see what we see as a creation, because
okay.
um, when we talk about stuff that's created, we have a point of reference, and our point of reference is uh, pretty much the things that we know that are created is because we know how they are created.
Ah,
I mean,
right.
you don't go. It's it, it's why I think the watchmaker argument fails. If you see a watch on a beach, well, if that's what you see, you don't only see a watch, you see millions of watches, because every grain of sand would be something that was created, and that's not how you see it, even.
Uh, hmm.
Well, I could be wrong, but I
Well, I
I don't
basically, I
think that
suppose you're saying that. Hmm?
yeah, I don't think that
Look,
you're going to
you can
walk
make
on
it.
a beach and everything you see is, oh, that's created, and how would that have been created? That's not how you
It's.
go about things.
Well, I mean, if you're a scientist, you can go, "Oh, I wonder how that formed." But that's beside the point. I think I see what you're saying. You're saying that there's no reason to believe that the universe is created, and I think, well, there is. See, um, we live in a universe that actually has a beginning. We know this now. We didn't always know that. Like some, I don't know, a couple of centuries ago, the uh, the the scientific idea of the universe was that it was a they call it the steady state universe. It had always been, it was eternal. And so Christians actually struggled with that a bit because they thought, okay, well, the Bible says that the
Hmm.
universe was created. So the interpretation was then that God, the universe existed eternally, so did God. And they kind of existed in a like nominally like causative way, but without any actual creation, right? That was the interpretation. Then we discovered the microwave background radiation and all that evidence of the Big Bang,
Hmm.
which is obviously the evidence of a moment when the universe came into being. And you might have heard this one before. Something doesn't come from nothing. Like the universe came into being, so there had to be something that could bring it into being. And the only thing that I can see that actually fulfills the necessary requirements to bring a universe into being is a like basically what we'd call a god.
Hmm. Well, it also
Yep.
depends on what you mean by nothing.
Yes. That is a.
Lawrence Krauss came up with something. I have to say I struggle with that kind of science. I really do. So I'm not going to pretend that I understand everything that he's talking about.
Mhm.
What I did do is talk with a good friend of mine, and there's also this thing we've discovered that is dark matter. And what I did is make some kind of an analogy, at least, is when you have an overdraw on your bank account of
Yep.
$10 and you have $10 in your pocket, you
Mhm.
by definition have nothing, yet you have $10 to spend.
Ah. Okay.
That's
I,
how I see it. If the state of nothing is as I see it, positive and negative material, it still amounts to nothing. What they also have found out, that the total energy count of the universe is nothing.
Yes, I was actually going to
So,
bring that up. Sorry if I can interject here. I've actually seen Lawrence
um,
Krauss live, debating Dr. William Lane Craig. That was a number of years ago now. But this is a very important point. Like, what is nothing? And what you're talking about there is it's really a bit of sleight of hand, right? When you're giving you're talking about the bank account example.
mhm.
That's not nothing exactly. Like, I mean, to use the other example of in the total energy of the universe is nothing. Well, uh, only if you look at a very particular way. Like, I think the way that works is it counts gravity as negative energy or something like that. But obviously, we have energy in the universe. Like the sum might be zero if you count it up a particular way, but that doesn't mean that that's not the same as nothing, right? When we're talking about nothing, I mean, everything that is encapsulated in what we call nature,
Mhm.
right? The state of that not existing at all.
Yeah, but
That's nothing.
we don't have an example of that.
Well,
Any,
no, because you can't have an example of nothing. It is a total negation. You can't say here is a total negation because you
Mhm.
can't. I mean, we can't have that inside space time because it would be it's
But that also means if we can't have that, that also means that we can't prove it actually exists in the way that we think it exists.
we don't have to wait, but we don't have to. It's a concept that's like easily. I don't understand why it would need proving in that sense because we can just think, okay, think of everything. Now think if it wasn't. That's nothing, right? It's
But
so.
can you actually visualize that?
I mean,
And
I
and
suppose
can
it would just be
and
black, but black.
but can you prove that's even possible?
Of course, it's possible. Why would it need to be proven in an empirical sense?
Well, until we know that it's actually possible,
Of course, it's possible.
yes,
Like,
it's plausible.
yeah,
Okay,
but we
that doesn't mean that that's what actually happened. So
well,
we can't take the leap that that's what's actually
well,
happened.
but
What
it
we
seems
need is some kind of evidence that
okay.
that's actually what really happens, and
See,
then we
this
need
is
to find out
okay.
where the matter
Uh,
came from.
okay. This is a that I think you're actually misusing evidence here. See, if you're talking about scientific evidence, you can't have so science studies nature, so it studies things that are within the universe. It
Hmm.
by definition cannot you cannot get evidence um, of something before the universe in that sense. Like it's impossible, right? That doesn't mean that we can't
How
know
would
it
you know? How would you know it's impossible?
because by definition, if science studies the universe, and you are asking for something that is outside the universe, then by definition, it is outside the realm of science. Science cannot study it because it can conjecture, right? We can conjecture and kind of draw conclusions from the evidence that we have, which is what I'm doing, right? Like,
Yes, but
um,
you have no good reason that what
yes, I
you
do.
are.
Yes, I do.
No,
We
no,
know
no.
that. Yes, yeah. No, we know that.
Let me finish. Let me finish.
Okay,
You
sorry.
don't have a good reason to actually know that what you think is the starting position was actually the starting position. So if your first premise is wrong, then everything that follows from that first premise is wrong.
Okay,
So
I, I,
unless you can find some sort of evidence that at least your first premise is correct, and that's why I reject the Kalam cosmological argument, because and correct me if I'm wrong, everything that exists had a beginning. Isn't that the first premise?
Everything that begins to exist has a cause. That's very important.
Has a cause. Okay.
Yes, right. That's very important because it means that.
And that's the one that I reject, because we don't have a way of testing if that's actually correct.
There's a couple of things I want to say there. So first is that our models show that before the Big Bang, there was no space and time essentially did not exist before that point. Right? So
we don't know
yes,
that.
We do. Yes,
no.
I'm telling yes, I'm telling you that is what the theory says, right? We don't know. Nobody has seen this because they can't, right? We can't go back in time and see it. But we can make tests. Science doesn't know things in that kind of solid, someone has witnessed it sense all the time, right? We can draw observations, and physicists make models, and then they test this, and then do more tests to see if their observations of the universe fit with what the models predict. And the Big Bang does fit with.
We haven't gone back that far.
We have gone back really far. We actually have.
Yeah, we actually have.
We've gone back so far that
but we haven't got
seconds after the Big Bang. Not even seconds.
We didn't even get to point zero. We didn't even get to point zero.
We've gone back
to I think it's microseconds after.
Yeah, that seems like yes, yeah, that's right. I think it's about microseconds, but saying it feels very nitpicky that you are saying, oh, we are only microseconds from the actual starting point, therefore I can discard everything that you're saying.
But that is the fact. You can't, if you can't go back further, then you can't make concrete claims of what happened before that.
So what you're saying,
you can guess, and you can make models. I agree.
Yes.
But you can't claim anything with certainty, and that's what science does.
But that's not what science does. Sorry. Do you mean that science is making a certain claim and that it shouldn't, or that, or do you mean that I'm making a certain claim and that I shouldn't be, and that I don't have good reason to do that because I don't actually know what happened then?
They're not making claims about things that they don't have a way of investigating.
But okay, so regarding the Big Bang, they do have a way of investigating it. That's what they're doing. That's why we keep, that's why we keep pushing back our knowledge to closer and closer and closer to the actual starting point of Big Bang. Yes, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting there. Now, it's not unreasonable to draw conclusions based on incomplete evidence. We do that all the time, right? If we waited for absolute certainty to do things, we would rarely get anything done.
No,
so this
idea, there I agree. We don't have absolute certainty of anything, because every time when new evidence comes in, we have to be able to adjust accordingly. So that's why I think it's the most honest thing to say what happened before is we don't know. And when the answer is we don't know, then we can't just grab something that we would like to have happened and that would maybe be comfortable for some of us to have happened. We can't put it in there because that's, and someone in the chat just said it. that would be God of the gaps, because we have a gap.
Okay.
Now we can slip in God at that moment as the cause, and that's not how things are done. That's not how science works.
Okay. Well, first, so you're making two accusations at me here. The first is that I'm inserting a comfortable myth that I like into
No.
it.
It wasn't meant. It wasn't meant personally. It was meant in
Okay,
general.
right. Okay. So, and the second thing is that, we don't know. Well, all the models say that there was a beginning. See, we don't have to know the specifics of the beginning to know that there was a beginning, right? Like, does that make sense? We don't know this, we don't know the specific mechanism, like whatever happened, like those microseconds after the Big Bang that we have not yet investigated. But we do know that there was a Big Bang and that it was a start of space and time, right? It's very simple. Like, we don't even if we were maybe still like seconds or minutes from the Big Bang, I could still say that there was a beginning because uh, the I have the evidence of the constantly expanding universe. And if the universe had been expanding from infinity, it would. I mean, that's impossible. It would be infinitely big, and it's not, right? So I
Well,
can say from the
I've
expansion.
bounced. Let me respond to that. I've bounced an
Yep.
idea of a friend of mine quite recently. Um, in the universe, we have black holes.
Yep.
What we know about those is that, and he just joined the chat, so that's going to be good. He can at least help me out with the stuff. If I say nonsense, he'll correct me. Um, we have black holes. We we know that matter goes into a black hole, but we have no way of investigating what's actually happening inside the black hole. So let's let's just hypothesize, what if a black hole is actually forming a singularity for an
Mhm.
entire new universe that's
Okay.
going to pop up. If that is the fact, then we're not at the beginning when we're talking about the Big Bang, because then the beginning would be the black hole, and the black hole would have its beginning in an existing universe. And so then we would be back to something that's actually
Okay.
eternal.
Yep.
But since we don't have a way of investigating, it could be a possibility. We'll never
Okay.
will we might never know until we find a way
Mm.
to actually investigate what's actually happening.
Mhm.
But just saying that everything that had a beginning had a cause, first of all, we're we know that the universe as it exists now had a beginning.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that everything that we now have in the universe had that beginning.
Uh, um,
And that's the point I want to get to.
all right. I'll just gotta address something. Sorry. I just pulled up the chat and Doc Hack and Slash said that uh, all models said there was beginning. I mean, I suppose that was not really like what I mean is, you're right, that isn't true. What I meant was that the models of the Big Bang that I've seen basically point back to a singularity, which is, you know, like they point back
Yes,
to a point where,
to a singularity, but not to a definitive beginning. And
we
that's
see.
Doc
Mm,
Hackenslash is actually the guy that I talked to about stuff like this, because uh, he's a lot better when it comes to physics and stuff like that. And he actually writes about it, talks about it with scientists. So he
mm,
knows a lot more about it than I'll ever do.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's what I said.
yeah. Well,
That's why I can reject the first premise.
I'll also mention your idea of, like, black holes generating universes. idea of a multiverse that generates universes. From what I've read, such a thing, like, if we are just like a universe generated by a black hole in a universe that generates other universes, then that explanation breaks down because we even that universe, by the physics that we can model, that universe would still require some kind of origin point.
Sorry,
So that just pushes the problem further back.
yes. And
Yeah.
what would be the problem with pushing the problem further back?
It doesn't address the problem. It doesn't address it.
No,
That's the
but
thing.
if that's a true answer, then um, what would be the problem? I mean,
it's
when we discovered the Big Bang,
okay.
I think the first thing was that they narrowed it down to I think a billion years after the Big Bang, and we got closer and closer and closer and closer by means of investigating. So we did push back every time.
Yep. Okay. That's not the question here, because the question isn't specifically what was before the Big Bang. The question was, why is there something rather than nothing? And I'm getting the accusations of God of the gaps, which is not particularly persuasive to me. Mostly because atheists tend to bring it up whenever someone mentions science and God in the same sentence. The question is, why is there something rather than nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
The universe is not self-creating. It is not necessary, like, by definition. The universe doesn't have to exist, right? There are possible, like, if you're familiar with the term possible worlds, there's possible worlds where there is no world, there is no universe, right? Like, and so that means that there has to be something necessary that made the universe come into being by whatever mechanism, right? I mean, neither of us are scientists, so we can probably, like, poke holes in each other's science all day.
Mm-hmm.
But
the difference is how you look at things. You say there has to be something that makes a universe. I wouldn't use the term make, because it could also be something that just changes state, and the state it's currently in is the universe that we find ourselves in.
well, like I said, that is a misunderstanding of what nothing is, because nothing. Doc Hackenslash in the chat said that nothing is unstable; it cannot persist. That, if you think that is the case, we are not talking about the same thing. If if you mean, for example, like, a quantum vacuum or whatever, that will spontaneously generate things because it cannot exist in a state where there's no energy or anything, that's not nothing. It's a quantum vacuum, right? If you're talking about um, any mechanism of natural law that will bring a universe into being, that's not nothing. It's a mechanism of natural law that will bring a universe into being, right? I'm asking, why is there anything at all that exists, right? Why is there nature, right?
Okay,
Why is there anything, like,
but
everything that is within the realm of science that science can investigate?
I could answer that, and it is,
Yeah.
we don't know.
Well, you see, okay, you're saying you don't know, and I'm saying, but I know. I have this explanation that I find satisfactory, and that's what we are here to discuss.
Okay, so now I'm going to quote Aaron Ra.
Yep.
And I actually agree with him on this. Knowledge is demonstrable.
Mm-hmm.
So you say you know. So can you demonstrate that what you know is actually correct?
What do you mean? Well, you have to pick
Knowledge,
something specific.
knowledge is demonstrable. If you know something, you can demonstrate it.
Wait, can you demonstrate that for me?
What do you mean?
Well, give me an example of demonstrating some knowledge.
Well, if I know what a car is,
Yep.
I can demonstrate a car to you, and I can explain to you why that is a car.
Mm-hmm.
I work with a computer. I don't know how exactly the processors in a computer work. I have a rough idea,
Yep.
but that's something I couldn't demonstrate. That's knowledge that I don't have. So I couldn't
Okay.
demonstrate that. If you say, I know, then you'll at least have to be able to give me some sort of demonstration of what you know.
Okay. Um. hmm.
Because just claiming you know doesn't get us anywhere. And if it's just a claim, then you can by definition you can't know it.
Um.
You can
You,
think that that's the best viable option you can think of,
hmm.
but that would be an argument from ignorance, because if that's the best possible thing you can think of, what
Why can't someone think of
what
something better?
reasons
I
do you
understand.
have that
Yeah.
someone else can't come up with a better explanation?
How do you know? How do you know that I wouldn't change my mind then? But no, I think I see what you're saying there. But mm. Okay. Hmm. Well, just to go back, since I see some people have made some comments in the chat. Right. Two things.
Hmm.
First, God is outside the realm of science because he is outside the universe, which is the realm of science. Right.
Which you
That
don't
doesn't mean
know.
that science. That doesn't mean that science has nothing to say. Right. For example,
Yeah,
this we wouldn't even be
this
having this conversation, please,
wait a
if
minute. This is something that you don't know. You assume.
but no, no, no. See, no, I can't actually assume this reasonably because see, science is a definition, and we're operating on its definition, and its definition is, the study of like the natural world, the study of the universe. So if I say this is a thing outside the universe, then science, by definition, cannot study it. And you can say, well, demonstrate this for me, but I don't. That's not a question that makes sense if we're talking about definitions, which we are talking about definitions.
No. But what we're talking about is assumptions. Um, I'm I'm doing this chat alone. This is the second chat today. I usually have the option to bring in a co-host, because
Mhm.
recently two women joined my channel, and off and on they are my co-hosts. One of them, we're going to video soon. One of them will be visible on video. The other one will not
Okay.
be visible on video. We chose for an option. She's going to be the invisible pink unicorn. And
Okay.
she can be the invisible pink unicorn because she's outside of space and time. She cannot be investigated by science, and therefore she exists.
Okay. Well,
That's exactly the same reasons you just gave me for there being a God.
not exactly.
Yes.
Well, so we have no reason to assume that that's like we have no reason to assume that they could be, but that doesn't mean that should reasonably assume it. What I'm saying here is,
That's how
by
I
the way,
see that's how I see God.
okay. Well, a couple of things. First, Karandeep said that God has a gender now. I say no. English language has a gender. I am using the pronoun because I'm referring to a person, not a thing.
Yeah, I think
Right. So,
that would be a little bit nitpicky. I mean, we
yeah.
all know that you at the start you said you were a Christian.
Yep.
So the Christian God is defined in the Bible as being male because he had a wife. and so we can pretty much assume that he's a man. He's also described as a man. He met Abraham. He sat down with Abraham. He knocked on the door, and there were three men outside the door. Two left, one stayed. The one who stayed was Yahweh, was God. So it's safe to assume that the biblical God is male.
I mean, effectively could say that, but it's kind of a non-question, because if God is a a immaterial being,
but
then
I'm going by what the Bible actually says.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but people, when we refer to people, we always use gendered pronouns, because that's how we refer to other people normally, right? Because everybody has a gender, so we use those pronouns because it makes it.
Well, Jesus calls him the Father, so if God were female, he would have called him the Mother. I think it's pretty clear, and I also think it's a non-topic. I mean,
it is. It's a non-topic.
Whether or not God is male, I don't care. What I care about is whether or not he exists.
Yes,
and he can be demonstrated to exist.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. It is beside the point. Now, two other things just from the chat, and this is a reasonable enough question. So Hack and Slash says you can't reasonably assume that there is such a thing as outside the universe. You'd really need to define the universe. And I'm saying, okay, fair enough. Outside the universe is outside space and time, which is not. There's no reason to think that that's impossible. You can say that, oh, I need to demonstrate that. No, I don't, because we don't have any reason to say it's impossible. So, like, it's not not every claim is assumed to be false first, right? It's neutral, and we don't have anything to disconfirm it. There's no reason to believe that it's not possible, right? So yeah, that's that question answered as far as I'm concerned. Now, this, you're talking about the magic pink unicorn, and so why can't we assume that that exists too? Well, I can doc, and I will anyway.
Yeah, I think it's better not to look at the chat too much.
Yeah, I think
something you want to interject, or that I want to interject, then we can refer to the chat.
Yeah, it's okay. But, so the reason we can't say, oh, there's all these things outside. Well, okay, I'll give you something that it does exist outside the universe. Every abstract object, it is something that does not exist in space and time. I cannot show you the essence of the number one. It is abstract, right? I can show you like a particular example of a singular thing. I can show you one apple, but I cannot show you one.
No, but one is just a concept that we made up.
Yeah, it's okay. So that means what you are claiming there is that numbers are a construct of the human mind and do not exist outside it. That's what you're saying.
It's a tool. It's a tool we use, and we made up, so we can use it. So we can define that's one apple or that's two apples. It's a concept that we came up with. So it's a one doesn't refer to an entity that has particular powers. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, that's right. It doesn't, like, there is no one, like, one does not have the number one does not have causative power. But your claim there is that numbers are just like a useful tool that the human mind can use to, like, work things out, which doesn't really explain why it would have such a utility in science, like mathematics. The power of mathematics is incredible, right? Why does it, why do so many things fit mathematically? There's no reason to assume that that is an essential component of a universe. That like it is possible, like, not
No, but
not saying this again.
again, mathematics is a tool that we came up with
Yes, but that's
to
okay.
to
I know
to
you.
to to Doc just said it in the chat. It's the language we use to describe quantity, and that's where we go from, and
It
that's
is, but
what we use. It's still, you can't compare that with an all-powerful entity that's capable of creating a universe. I mean, then we're talking about a specific entity. We're talking about something that at least has a mind, because it has to have, if it the one that at least the one that you're describing has a mind, has an intent by creating a universe, wants that universe in a very specific way. So he would have created it in a very specific way,
right.
I guess. That's what you're assuming.
Yep.
But and I told this one before, earlier today. In Holland we have Domino Day, where something starts out with a tiny movement that causes a chain reaction that can actually topple stones that are 2 stories high. So what you need to start all of that off, that huge action that you get in the end,
Yeah.
just needs maybe not more than a fly landing on something, or a dust particle landing on something. If you can go back far enough, if you can make things
Okay.
small enough,
Okay. So
it
you're
could.
saying that God is an unnecessary explanation because it's too big. Is that what you're saying?
um, what I would say is that all the attributes that you put on it, you have no justification for putting
Ah,
all the
okay.
attributes on it,
Like,
because it could very well be uh, a completely different and a completely a reasonable uh, um, cause
okay.
that caused the universe to come into being.
Um, I will have to
There's
make
no.
a distinction. I just need to make a distinction here. See, if we're talking about God here in the generic monotheistic sense, not necessarily the Christian God exactly, right? When we are talking about the creation of the universe, because the way you'd get from, like, you don't get the Christian God from the from the, answering yes to, was the universe created by an entity, right? You
Mhm.
get, you just get a generic God figure, right? And
No, you don't even get a
so
God figure. You get an
no,
entity.
no, well, if you answer affirmative to the questions that will give you a God, you get the God figure. You don't necessarily get the Christian God. And I need to make that distinction because um, otherwise, like, things can get kind of tangled up
Mhm.
in arguments, right? But now, um, so you're saying that, yeah, there's no reason to give it these attributes, but there is. See, if you're talking, let's use your domino example. You're saying, all we need is this would be some tiny thing, and like there could be a chain reaction that creates the universe. Well, for that to, like, if just say, we have universe creating dominoes that you only need to give them like a tiny bit of energy or tiny push, and eventually they'll build up and create a universe. That doesn't really have uh, any kind of explanative power
No,
because
it doesn't. It
no,
doesn't.
no, it doesn't.
I agree with you there. But what I was trying to make clear is that uh, even if we can agree on the fact that it has a cause, the cause could be something minute,
Yep.
and
Well,
we don't have to make the leap to anything bigger than that. If
Um,
we don't have a reason to look for anything bigger than that.
mm,
Because here's the thing. If hit if let's say, for the sake of argument, that the universe was created by a god,
yep.
why would he create a universe uh, for let's say it's the Christian God?
Mm,
Why create a universe for us, the only people that we're aware of that he's even caring about, then making a universe that's not only completely useless to us, but it's also hostile pretty much everywhere you go outside
ah,
Earth.
so, oh, right. So you're saying that why would God create a universe that kind of sucks for us? Well, you see,
Yeah,
if we
well,
talk about if we're talking about the Christian,
wouldn't it be enough to just then create some kind of plane that we can live on, and have some kind of roof covering that, which is pretty nice to look at? Why
well,
bother with
everything else, okay.
the bulk you create for absolutely nothing?
Okay, a few answers to that, which is, I think this is an easy question. First, if we're going by the Christian Bible, then in the beginning, the whole world was pretty good, and then it wasn't. So, if you want to say, you know, why wasn't the world better at creation? I can say, but it was. Now, secondly, why
But
create all this
sorry,
other stuff if we're just
I have to ask. Is this actually what you believe?
I'm not see, the garden. I'm not really the Garden of Eden story. I mean,
Well,
it's.
because you just
I'll look at it
I'm
this way.
not
I'll look at it this way.
I'm not I'm
Um,
not what I'm trying to do
can I
is
can I
I hate
okay fine.
assuming things. So when
Yeah,
you
okay.
said the world at the start was good, what I'm then asking is what exactly do you believe
Okay.
happened? I'm not pushing you into to
Yeah. Okay.
uh, what the Bible exactly says, because I've met a lot of Christians who don't believe that Genesis actually happened. So
Yeah. See, that's
I
I'm
just want to be clear that I'm not going to fight
yeah
you on stuff that you
yeah okay
don't even believe.
yeah. Well, at the moment, I'm inclined to think that like the exact Genesis story is like a what do you call it? Like it's a uh like it's not literal. You know,
Hmm.
it didn't like exactly happen like that. It's like a represent, like it's a story that's being told that kind of represents roughly what happened in a way that like can make sense to everybody. You know, across thousands and
Doc,
thousands of years, right?
Doc Hackenslash just threw in the word I couldn't think of it either. Allegory.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially, like it's truth, but not in a kind of way that it's not like literal truth, and that's fine, right? Like
Hmm.
we tell each other we use that kind of thing all the time without even thinking about it.
Okay.
You know?
So
Not everything
what pieces
is
of
truth.
it do you think then are true from the story?
Um, can I just get back to the question when I don't like leaving things unfinished.
Okay, go ahead.
You were asking what was it? Uh, why do I need to? Yeah, yeah, why the
Why you
why
what
assume that God has these attributes, right?
what
That's important. I mean, so I'll just finish this up really quickly. Um,
okay.
Basically, we can't assume that. So the creation of a universe. Well, that's right. Why create all this extra stuff in the universe? And I've got to ask, like, why not? Like, if you have infinite power, there's almost no difference between creating any amount of something. You can just do it. Why not? Like, you can, and like, galaxies are beautiful. You can't deny that. I mean, I suppose you might not find them exactly aesthetically pleasing to your to your taste, but in generally you can say that galaxies are beautiful, right? And
Sure.
there's a lot of them. Right? So, like,
I
and if
would
if
I would
God
agree.
valued beauty, which I mean, I believe he does, then he's going to create more of it because that's better. So that's that, and that's that answer dealt with from my perspective.
Yes,
Anyway,
but if you have that power, then why
yeah.
not make it so that the creatures that you're going to create also uh, have access to that beauty? Why keep it?
Well, maybe I don't know. Like, maybe we will later. Something like, maybe we will discover faster than light travel. I mean, I hope so. That'd be nice to have galactic
Well,
internet.
so do I. But wouldn't
But
that be uh, a little bit disappointing for the people that came before us, or even us, if we don't get to live it? Um, why wouldn't we all be privy of doing this? Because if correct me if I'm wrong, uh, the biblical God is described as being a just God. Then, if he's a
yes,
just God, then why don't give everyone the
justice
same?
isn't this. Well, that's not exactly justice. That's equality, which is I mean, which is an idea that's adjacent to justice, but um, it's not the same thing. And so your answer is, I suppose your question is maybe getting towards why didn't God create us in a better state? Uh, well, see, if he did, then what we would have would be a very different um, universe, right? Like, the universe obeys certain laws, and we can conceive of universes obeying different laws. But and here we go into the fine tuning argument. If the laws were slightly different, we have something very different. It's chaotic in that kind of chaos theory sense of when you change the starting conditions, even a fraction, you end up with something radically different. And the universe is like that. It's so finely tuned, as I'm sure that you've heard
Yes.
before, that yeah. So it's like, well,
But I also have enough imagination that if it was slightly different, maybe life would have been slightly different, and there would be some form of life that we now even can't imagine, or can imagine to be possible. So
see, well, if we're talking about things that we can't imagine to be possible, then you're leaping into a realm that's even beyond me as an irrational theist. But it's not like if we can't even imagine the possibility, then we can't really have a meaningful discussion about it.
no, but what I'm trying to say is that life as we know it
Hmm.
might
How
just
how
might just be that life
how do
as
you
we
not
know it.
know that this is still the best possible type of life? That
We don't.
yes, we don't. So we're getting into a realm that we could kind of wander endlessly on without getting anywhere.
Yes,
That's
but
that,
what it also means that this is not the only possibility.
but it is the possibility we have.
And you mentioned fine tuning. Fine
Yep.
tuning is a nonsensical phrase, because
It's
you're looking at something that was specifically created for us to be completely right. It's the other way around. We exist because of how the universe is set up, and how
that's
in
kind of
particular our earth is set up.
Yeah,
that
that's
gave us the conditions for
mm,
life to arise, and here we are.
yeah.
It's a very
I
simple,
wait.
a
I
very
see what I know what you're saying. I've heard this before. It's like, we only observe this because we are here to observe it. It's not like,
a very
we
simple
shouldn't be surprised that we're
no
here.
a very simple way of explaining it is when you see a puddle, um, the hole in the ground is perfectly fine tuned for the water in that shape to fit in that hole. But that's actually not what's happening. There
Well,
is a
no, see,
hole, and the hole is getting filled with water, and it will fill in the form that the hole is in.
yes, okay.
So
That's not that.
that's how you have to view life on
No,
Earth as well. We are the
I
water. We are the water, and the universe is the hole that we're in.
see.
We're just formed within the limitations of the hole that we're in.
Um,
So it's
I
not
can't.
the universe. It's not the universe that's fine tuned. When you come to think of it, it's us that is fine tuned to be alive in the universe as it exists. It's completely the other way around.
Uh, see, no. See, water will fill any, whatever shape it's in, but
So alive.
it, no, it won't, because
Yes, it will.
like,
Have you heard of extremophiles?
yes, I have, but see, that's different because that's already okay.
How's that different?
Because like life, for example, can't okay. Life, if we okay, let's imagine a universe that has extremely high order, which means that, and I'm using this in the sense that after after its moment of instantiation, it all matter energy is quickly locked into kind of like a rigid structure similar to like those similar to certain patterns that form in liquids when they're heated in a certain way, right? Like, you've got this innate structure forming like environment, and in an environment like that, life would never begin to exist because you would have a universe where everything's kind of set into its place almost like so quickly that there would never be kind of complex forms, right, that require different different kind of configurable.
You've lost me completely.
Okay,
I don't have
I'm
a
sorry.
clue what
Okay, I'll explain another way. Like, life isn't. You're almost talking like life is essential. It's not, right? Like, the the chemicals that make up our bodies have, like, I don't know how many, but like countless different configurations.
yeah.
Like, relatively few of them actually give rise to living beings. Like, like with our
Hmm.
DNA, if like, we can have one gene out of place, and suddenly like you just die out of, when you're born, or
Yes.
if you've got like in proteins, if they're slightly different, suddenly you have cancer, and that shows.
I don't know if you could say that because there's
Oh yeah,
we still don't have what actually causes cancer. So
well,
if
we
we
actually kind of do a bit. Like, we can say that all these things cause cancer. We can look at cancer cells and say, okay, these cancer cells have these, but generally, cancer cells have the protein that regulates like the cell's kind of growth doesn't work. So the growth is unregulated, so it just grows and grows and grows, right? And that's like, that's cancer, right? That's how cancer works. So yeah, we can say, I can say that.
we can say how it works. We can't say where it comes from and what initiates it. That's what I meant.
Oh, we do have examples, like, certain toxins that interfere with, like, you know DNA and all that. But that's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that,
And those are still aren't definite because
well, yeah,
smoking. I smoke. Smoking causes cancer. Okay,
yeah,
smoking causes cancer. I know a lot of people who have lived to a very long age. My grandfather was one of them. He lived to be 84 years old.
yep.
and
smoke?
he never had cancer.
Yeah. And he smoked,
So that,
right?
and he smoked, and he smoked a lot more than I do, because he only needed a light 3 times a day. That was in the morning,
Mm.
his first cigarette, after and then after every meal, because what he then used to do is light one cigarette with the other.
Hmm.
He was smoking constantly.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, I mean, we can say that smoking causes cancer because it causes damage to cells, but you need a very specific type of damage to
yeah, but
cause
it's
cancer.
still not, it's still not
It's
a definite.
it.
What I mean to say, and we're veering off completely now.
We are like,
But
see, the question, what the point I was making was not what causes cancer. It's just that the components of life can be arranged in like countless ways that are not life producing, right?
no,
So
correct.
when we say that, so if you want to make the claim that life will kind of fit whatever mold it's like kind of poured into, that's not true. There's if we want to expand that analogy, there's if we have infinite molds, okay, not infinite, like like a billion different kind of like molds, and you could pour the component. We're talking about like magical molds that like create life if they're in the right shape or whatever, right? Like only a few of those would actually produce life. Like these, it's not a case of like here we have like life stuff and we pour it into a into a shape and it will just assume that shape, right?
Hmm.
Um, Not every universe is life producing. Right? Not every set of conditions will produce life. Otherwise, we'd see life everywhere rather than just on this planet. We have
I
like
think I think I
maybe
think
there was life on Mars, but we haven't seen life
I think
anywhere
I
else.
no, we and that's the argument from ignorance fallacy. Because we haven't seen it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Yes, I know, but it's if we'd seen life in other places, like if there were other civilizations um, that were at our level, which I mean maybe there are, but we would reasonably think that maybe we should have detected some of their transmissions or something right now. We have people looking literally all the time, right? Like
How
on this
how
planet.
how how would we? I mean, how old is our civilization? And
Of course.
if we take it from that, how old are our earliest transmissions?
Yeah.
If you
I
go
see what you're
and
saying.
look, and if you go and look and look at the distance from us to the nearest other uh, uh,
Galaxy? Or
star system,
I 3 light years, yeah.
we're
Hopefully.
we're not even in reach that our transmissions have reached there, and that's only
Really?
the nearest one.
Are you sure? I thought they would have by now. Really?
So the fact that we haven't seen any transmissions, if there's life billions of light years away from us that arose about the same time that we did, we're not going to have those transmissions for another billion years.
Hmm.
So the fact that we haven't seen those is actually quite logical.
I just got to dispute you. I'm pretty sure that our transmissions would have reached Alpha Centauri by now. I'm pretty sure.
Tony just dropped it in. Our signals have made it less than 1/10 of 1% of the distance across our galaxy.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely. But like the closest systems to us, I'm pretty sure they've reached there by now.
Yes,
Anyway,
but
yeah,
it isn't
I know what you're saying.
it isn't a given that there is life there. Then there's
Of
not a
course not.
given that there's life that's been existing as long as we do. Then there's a given that
Yeah,
that life
but that,
might not be using radio transmissions, might have another way of
mm,
communicating. So the fact that we don't have signals from other civilizations doesn't mean that they're not there.
yeah, okay, that I can accept that. Aliens would be fun, maybe, if they're friendly. But this is beside the point. We're talking about like what was it like? Life will just fit whatever mold.
What we
What we're
were
talking about
talking
is
about.
life will fit
Well,
whatever mold it's given. It won't.
life will arise in a universe as we know it, as it's set up as we know it.
Yes.
Life is by definition going to arise, because when you
That's a contentious claim.
no,
It
isn't.
is.
It isn't.
I just gave you an example of a universe where life could not exist at all in any form, and that type of universe
Yes, but now you're
is
talking about a different
common.
universe.
No,
You're talking about
but I am no,
the
but
universe. I said,
that's what we were talking about, right? Like I know we just got onto like life within our own universe, but the initial question was like, like the kind of fine tuning thing, like why does life exist in this universe and all that. The range. So we have a range of like variables that are supposedly like life permitting. The range, like the actual values that permit like complex life are very narrow compared to the actual like kind of range of values that these kind of numerical quantities and constants could be at. Yeah, you with me?
yeah, but you're still going at it from the wrong direction.
Now I'll get to that in a second.
You're going
It's
from
not.
what you're doing is coming from the conclusion and then going back and saying this all had to be perfect to get to this conclusion, and it's the other way around.
You're saying it's perfect.
Things are, and they lead to a conclusion. And that's why I use the puddle analogy, because the form the water is in is dependent on the form that the hole in the ground is in. If the hole in the ground is different, the exact same amount of water could possibly fit in it, but in a completely different form.
Okay, but see, it's still not. If I saw a hole in the ground that was like a perfect circle, right, which is very, very, very rare, I would still be reasonably justified in asking and thinking that circle is a perfect circle. That is so uncommon. I have to think about what could cause that, right? Because you rarely find like that kind of.
Have you seen craters on the moon?
This is an example, like perfect. They're not perfect circles, right? Like the Earth isn't a perfect sphere. It's like slightly kind of wider around the equator, right? Like I'm talking about like mathematically perfect circles. You don't get those that often on like in like puddle holes. That's my point.
Okay.
Right? Like it's and that's what I'm saying here is the fine tuning is basically well, please.
Yep.
It's so unlikely, right? It's so unlikely.
Yes.
That we can question how that happened, right? It's because it's
how likely is a planet to have the exact same shape as our Earth? How likely is it that we find an exact identical twin anywhere in the universe?
It's pretty hard. So ignoring the
let me finish my argument. What I'm trying to get at is your perfect circle is just something that you recognize as being a perfect circle.
Right. Okay.
The probability for any other shape is exactly the same.
It's not really though. Like if we've got like
Yes,
a
it
range
is.
of if we've got a range of possibilities, right?
You want a
And
better
one
you
of
want a
them,
better
no, let me finish. Let me finish.
you want a
And one
better
of them
anal
produces like life,
you want
right?
a better analogy.
Yeah.
If you go and play the lottery, and
Yep.
we're going to pick the biggest one. We're going to join every
Yep.
lottery in the world into one
Well, I
lottery.
see where this is going. Basic.
Then
Okay.
then
Okay.
the possibilities of
Hmm.
having the winning ticket would be enormous.
Okay.
But
I
the fact is that one of them will be the winning ticket,
okay.
but it
No.
only will
Yep.
be the winning ticket when we have decided on a winning ticket. And that's what your circle is. Your circle is your
Okay.
winning ticket.
Yeah.
Every
I
other
see what
shape
you're
you
saying.
dismiss, every
Okay.
other shape you
Okay.
dismiss
Yep.
is as unique as your perfect circle.
Okay. I see what you're saying there. Right. And yeah, I see this, but that doesn't quite work. So, um, it's basically you're saying that like okay, it's like if we were rolling like 2 billion dice and to get life we needed all the dice to come up with six, right? And we roll them and you're saying that okay, what essentially is happening is we rolled the dice so often that eventually we got all sixes, and we shouldn't be surprised that we get all sixes and then get life because we've rolled it that many times. That's what you're saying,
No,
right?
and that's
Yeah, no,
not,
it is.
and
It
that's
is.
actually, and that's
That's kind of what you're saying. No,
no,
it is. That's what lottery.
no,
The
but
lottery
it
analogy is.
isn't.
You're saying that like, you know, so many people tried to get the winning ticket that eventually someone has it. That's what you're saying, right? And they shouldn't be surprised that they got it because so many other
Well,
people were trying.
you made the equation with life, and that's not how life works.
It's not.
Because
Well, I thought that's what. Sorry,
that's a
I
fall.
thought that's what you were saying.
No, that's a fallacy that I have seen used over time. That you
Mm.
need to in 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 one throw um, have to have the
Oh no,
winning
no, see, no,
numbers.
no, no, see, no, that's not. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that.
It's more like and I lost the name. It's more like the one-armed bandit, the gambling machine, where you can put on hold what is preferable, then have another goal.
Mm.
Then at some point you will have three line up. If you then go to the next machine
That's,
and
that's,
do the
that's what I
same
was
thing,
saying, man. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying that you were saying.
you don't need it in one throw.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. Right? That like with the dice, it's like we throw them and eventually you get all the dice lined up or whatever. Like that's. I understood you. Right? I understood you there.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, um. So yeah. Unfortunately, unfortunately for that argument that it'll just arise eventually is that the likelihood of was it abiogenesis, of like life just arising kind of by chance from like a soup or whatever of like life, you know like organic ingredients, is so low that even if all the universe were composed of such, the universe still wouldn't be old enough for it to have arisen by chance.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Okay, so what you're saying is that like life can arise by chance if you give it enough kind of time, right? Like you pull the lever enough times, and eventually, the things will line up, and you win and get life. That's what you're saying, right?
What I'm saying is that that can happen fairly quickly. Yes.
I'm saying it can't. It actually can't happen very quickly. It's so unlikely that the universe isn't old enough,
Why not?
even if it,
It's
because it's
just
not. Like
it's just chemicals coming together
but in a
in
very specific way when they have like so many different um
and how many possibilities do you think there are in the entire universe?
heaps. I think this a lot, right? There's a lot.
How many possibilities do you think there are per second?
This is what I'm talking about now is something that this isn't like my conclusion. This is what I've read.
I know
scientists saying this is revealed knowledge, right?
But it's what I'm trying to get at is what you read is wrong.
Well, okay, so you're claiming more authority than the scientists who kind of
No, I'm not.
this
I'm
out?
not claiming more authority. What I'm saying is that if you have billions and billions of opportunities,
but I'm saying yes, but there's still not enough, right? Like the chances are still so low, right? But we don't have. Yes, it's still not enough. It's still not enough, right? It's so.
What is enough?
What number? I think
Tony has asked a couple of times, and I was getting to it.
This is a scientific thing. I don't know the exact number that's enough, but what I read was that. Let me finish. I know what's insufficient, right? What's insufficient is right. This is what this I think it was a statistician said. He said that life arising by random chance is so unlikely that even if all the universe were composed of the kind of like organic primordial soup, it still would not have had enough time for life to arise by chance.
And how did he demonstrate that? What were the numbers that he actually used? Because if he's
I don't know. I didn't investigate. So I didn't investigate his raw data, and don't pretend that you do that kind of thing, because you don't.
I don't. But I don't accept the claim if I don't have the specifics. And you seem to have accepted the claim without having the specifics.
But people, okay, I have to call bullshit there, because you say you don't accept claims without specifics. I'm sure you do that all the time. Like people accept claims without knowing the specifics constantly, right? Like it's not a.
Actually, I had a 5-hour conversation about whether or not I could trust my couch to go and sit on it with presuppositional Christian.
That's
I did that on Christian radio, and I still have all the recordings. Only the last half hour I've published on this channel.
But you don't really you don't function in that way in your day to day.
No, you don't, because there are things that you can, if you have tried to sit on a couch one time, you pretty much can trust every couch to go sit on. Sometimes that fails. You can sit on a chair that's actually broken.
Yep.
And so the chair will collapse and you'll fall down.
Yeah.
It's not that you go around testing every chair if it's safe enough to go sit on.
Yeah. And I don't have to test like
when you make a claim about life, and when you make a positive claim that it is impossible, you have to show that it is impossible.
No, I don't. Like
because that's a claim. That's a claim that's going to have severe implications. So if that's a little bit more important than whether or not a chair is safe to sit on, because there are a lot of other chairs that I can go sit on. We only have one universe. If you're going to make a claim about this universe, that's something that's going to affect all of us. So if you're going to say the chances are impossible, then you at least have to be able to demonstrate that the chances are impossible. If you can demonstrate it, you can't know it, and you can throw it out as an idea, but it's nothing more than just an idea.
This is a very weird kind of idea that we have to like demonstrate everything. See, it's
why?
Because we don't like. Hey,
okay. Other than a god. Yeah. What else do you? What else? See, no, let me ask you a question. Other than a god, what else do you believe that you think doesn't need to be demonstrated
Okay. Well,
and hasn't been demonstrated.
okay. This. I'm sure the chat is going wild about an irrational theist who doesn't require demonstration, but no. This is when I say what you're doing.
Now, can
when
you ask? Can you answer?
I will. I have to. I have to address this. Right. What you're doing when you say that all knowledge requires demonstration is you're limiting knowledge to a very kind of like narrow definition,
No, I
right?
don't.
Which is only stuff you can demonstrate.
No,
right?
I don't. And the reason
you
I
are.
asked the reason I asked you this question is that will at least make you think, if there is one other thing other than a God that you don't require evidence for in
I do
order
have
to
evidence.
believe it.
Okay.
In order
See,
to
I have
believe
evidence
it.
that you don't regard as like sufficient evidence. I regard it.
You're still
dodging the question.
veering
But
away
what I'm
from my.
saying-
You said evidence isn't important, and you don't
No,
have
I
to
didn't
have.
say that. I said that demonstrating, right? Like,
Okay.
we don't.
And I asked you.
Our knowledge about the Big Bang. We do not demonstrate that. We do not make
I
little
asked
Big
you.
Bangs
No,
that we
listen.
then
I asked you a
do
specific
things.
question. What do you believe to be real that doesn't require a demonstration that it's real?
Numbers, right? Like numbers. You cannot like I said before. You cannot demonstrate the number one,
We
right?
can.
You can show me a particular. You cannot show me the essence of the number one. It is abstract, right? All abstract things like that.
It's a concept, and I can show you the concept. I can show you one
you
apple,
can show me
and
a
I can explain.
particular.
And I can explain.
What you show me is one apple. You can then say how this represents the number one because it is a singular, entity, but it is not oneness itself, right? And that's the kind of thing. That's what I'm saying, right? Like I can say, okay,
that wasn't my question.
Well, it kind of is. Like when I'm talking about when you say demonstration, I understand.
Is one real, or is it the descriptive term we use as a tool to describe quantity?
I think abstract objects exist apart from human minds. Yeah, does that make sense?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure how can I explain that.
How does one exist without a mind?
I mean, apart from human minds, because like when human minds did not exist, numbers like still worked, right? Like,
numbers still work, but the concept didn't exist.
Yeah, but like, okay,
it's a concept. It's a concept that we made up. It didn't exist until we made it up.
We just see that sounds like a bit of a weird way of like describing it. See, the laws of logic and mathematics, we didn't make those up. We discovered them, right? We discovered that they existed, like apart from us. That's why different people can discover, like, say like what was it, like Aristotle or whatever, who kind of, I suppose you would say, invented logic, was almost or like whoever discovered numbers. Let's go with maths. It's a bit easier, right? The people who kind of
Doc
discovered
Hackenslash beat me to it because I was looking for the words.
Yeah.
The rules of logic are just a description of how we think. It isn't. It isn't a separate entity, nor is the number one. It's not a separate entity. What I asked you is, what do you believe exists as an entity, as a thing, as something tangible that doesn't need an explanation, that doesn't need to be demonstrable?
Nothing. Okay, nothing. I don't believe in anything like that. That
Yes, you do. A god.
exists materially, right? Like all material things, you can demonstrate their existence.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So
So everything that exists in the universe needs to be demonstrable. That's what you're saying.
well, it doesn't need to like if it exists in the universe, it is like demonstrable in some sense. Now, if you're talking about things like I'll add on to that, if you're talking about things that stopped existing in the past, we don't need like we can't demonstrate them because they stopped existing, but we can
Can you give an
investigate
Can you
their
give an example?
like let's say I think the current theory about our solar system is that there was a like another planet and that collided with Earth, and that's kind of how the moon was formed, right? And
So it didn't stop existing; it just changed form.
it stopped existing as as like in its form of being like it stopped existing, right? Its matter
No,
continued to
it
exist. Yeah,
didn't.
it did.
It
But
ended.
like
It ended
its
up being.
component
No, it
ended
ended.
up
Yeah, its
it ended
components
up being
ended up.
part of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it still exists.
Well, no, it doesn't. It doesn't exist, right?
Yes, it still
Because
exists, just in a
no, it doesn't.
different form.
Yes, right. Yes, which is essentially for these purposes not existing, right? Like
No, it
because
isn't.
matter doesn't get destroyed,
No, but
right?
that's where
It
you're
changes
going.
form.
That's where you're going wrong. It
So
didn't stop to exist, because if it stopped to exist, everything that it was made up of wouldn't exist any longer.
so now we're getting into a different. You're basically saying that
To me, at
uh,
least, that's
well, see,
stopping
yeah,
to
that's a
exist.
very like reductionistic kind
No, but
of
to me, that's
view
stopping
of
to
it.
exist.
It that's
If
like okay, that's if I take a table apart and turn it just into like if I take a wooden table apart and I turn it into timbers, it does not exist as a table anymore.
I
So I
know
can say the table does not exist.
the concept of a
Now
table,
instead
that's a
there are some
concept.
timbers, right?
That's a man-made concept. A table.
Yeah, but and I can say the same with the planet, right? Like if it was like a planet that existed between
Planet is also how we describe a body in the universe.
what what you're saying is that our descriptions of the universe don't really bear any or much like they don't really they only really correspond to the universe because like as long as we keep looking at it, if that makes sense. Like you're saying it's a very you're
No,
taking a very reductionistic.
we describe certain things in a certain way.
Yeah, and I'm saying that like
We describe a table as being a table, but we
yeah,
could also describe it as
a
wood.
bunch of timber. Yeah, well, yeah, but that's I I get that, but
The function we give it,
you're actually just
I can give you can give you another explanation. In my old house, I had a
mm,
coat rack.
yeah,
The coat rack was made of a door,
right, yep,
just an old door,
yep,
and an old trunk. I bolted the two together. So now I had a coat rack with a bench that could open, where I could put in uh, my shoes, and
mhm.
where I could put in umbrellas and stuff, so I didn't have them lying around. So now the door was no longer a door, it was a coat rack.
Yeah,
The fact
okay,
that how we call things, the door didn't stop existing, because it's still there as we
yes,
speak.
okay. But
The
if
only
you
difference is it's no longer used as a door, so it didn't cease
okay,
to exist.
okay,
The
yeah,
same
that's
things, the same thing goes for your planet. Your planet didn't cease to exist.
it okay. If you like,
It got a new
if you put it,
form, it got a new
yeah, it got a
form,
new
and it got
form.
a new function.
If
But the
if I
planet,
put your door into a wood chipper, has it ceased to exist?
no, it just gets a different shape, and we call it something different.
That's the
We would
same as ceasing to exist, essentially,
no,
for this definition.
no.
Yes, yes, it
The
is.
only
You're
thing that
actually,
ceases, the only thing that ceases to exist is the concept of a door,
and that's why, and that's how we,
not
that's
the
how,
actual door, because
no,
the actual
no,
door
the
is still
actual door
here.
does cease to, like, no, it's, oh,
It still weighs the same. It's still made out of the same material.
but it does not fulfill any. So this is okay. This is
It
like
doesn't
saying,
fulfill the concept that we gave it.
yes, that's right. And these, like, those
So the
concepts have
concept,
meaning. It's like,
yeah. So the
okay,
concept
do you
stopped
think that,
existing, and not the door.
shape definitions exist?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that, like, a circle is always a circle, is always round, and, like, if you get its
It's it's
circumference and
it's
diameter, you get pi,
it's a
right?
defi- it's a
That's
definition. It's a definition that
yes.
we
So
came up
I'm
with,
saying if
and
something,
this definition has attributes. So when you're talking
and
about a circle that has attributes, and that means that a circle, by definition, because that is our definition of a circle, is perfectly round. If it's
yeah,
not
that's right.
perfectly round, we no longer speak of a circle.
No, we don't, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like, with the example of the door, is like, the door has certain attributes that everybody's familiar with the attributes of a door. If you change the door so it does not fulfill any of those attributes at all in any capacity, you have
Mhm.
caused the door to cease to exist,
No, you have
right?
caused the concept to cease to exist.
Which is essentially the same in,
No,
like,
it isn't, because the
the
door
its
still
component, its
it's
components still exist,
yes,
right? Its components exist, right? That's not the same as the door existing.
actually it
It's
is.
it's not, right? Like, it's not.
It is. It just gets a new concept
Yes,
because we
and
would
yes, right. And so the
it
old one
does
stops.
it just gets a new description because it looks different. The materials are still the same.
Yeah, but the materials are still the same. But the materials are not the door, right?
No,
Yeah, this is it. The materials are not the door. Yeah, they're
no,
not.
the door is a concept.
Yes, and and you're saying that it doesn't stop existing if it's completely changed, right? Because
No,
the material still
because
exists, and
the material is still here.
yeah, but the material is not the same as the
Stopping
thing.
to exist, stopping to exist is that it is no longer here.
It's not in that form, right? Like, so
That's
you'll
the
use
difference. I don't add on to it, not in that form. I stop at it doesn't no longer exist, period. I don't care about the form.
this is
Stopping to exist. Stopping to exist is stopping to exist.
mm,
If
that's
I die, if I die, I don't stop to exist. I just change into another form.
interesting. See, I also believe that. No, I that's a bad joke.
Well,
Anyway,
I'm pretty sure that you believe that part of you will
continue.
will
Yes,
still exist and go to some other place, and that's where we differ. But
yes.
our bodies won't cease to exist. If we die, it's not poof and we're gone, because the
Well, no,
body's
see,
still
that's not
there.
that's what I'm saying. You are using a very this is something that I see a lot of atheists do is they've got there's certain terms and words and they will only use a very narrow version of it
No,
and
because
won't recognize and they won't recognize any other definition, which makes having conversations really hard, and that's how we can get stuck on, like, one question for like half an hour.
yes,
I
but
remember
a
in our
definition, but we make definitions for a reason,
yes, and I'm saying that
and that
if the
is
thing
to
doesn't,
narrow,
if
and
the,
that is to narrow things down.
it's not, yeah, that's right, right. So an entity, if it meets the requirements of the definition, it's the thing, right? Like, if a piece of, like, if
I
a piece
agree.
of wood if it meets all the requirements of being a door, it's a door, right?
No,
And then
no,
if
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah, wait,
no, 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 no. That's a
yes,
man. That's a man-made concept. That's
this is
something. That's something we construct out of wood. If we make a
yeah,
door out of wood, it is still wood.
it's still wood, right? But it's still also a door. It has also entered
It gained a
into,
function.
yes, it entered into the category of
No,
door.
it gained a function.
Yeah, and which puts it in the category of door. Yes,
Yes, but
it is.
that's a function. That's a function that we give it.
It's
That's
fine.
a
Yeah,
description that we give it.
yes, and
It is still the wood that we
of
started
course,
out with.
I'm not disputing that. I'm saying that things can exist in multiple categories at once, right? But when something is, if the door is like put into a wood chipper, it has exited the category of door, and that means that that entity, as existing as a door, does not exist as a door. So that particular manifestation has ceased to exist, even though its material components continue to exist. Yes?
We still can't get past the fact. We still get past the fact that
Yeah.
the material the door is made out
I'm not
of.
denying that the material persists, right? Because matter does not get destroyed; it's always conserved.
Okay.
Matter and energy are always conserved.
So let's move on from this because we're
Okay,
going. I don't think that we're going to get
no, but we're not
anywhere
going to get anywhere.
from here.
No, we're not. Okay.
What you did say a couple of minutes back is that there was evidence for a God. So that's something that I would be interested in.
Yes. Now, um, so I mean, we've had a discussion on the Kalam cosmological argument in the past. I don't think we really got anywhere where we could agree. But this discussion is supposed to be about what I believe. So
Hmm.
I'm going to just list some things that I find very convincing. I find the Kalam cosmological argument convincing. I
Okay.
find the ontological argument
So
fairly
let's okay.
convincing,
Let's do it
right?
let's do it one by one. The Kalam
Yeah.
cosmological argument. Why do you think it's convincing?
I think it's convincing because
Okay, first, can you state it for me?
yeah,
Because
everything that begins to
different
exist has a
different people
cause.
state it.
The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Yeah, I find that
Yes.
convincing. I know from science that, well, I believe from science that the universe began to exist. Therefore,
Okay. For the sake of argument, let's go with that, and let's say the universe had a beginning and had a
yep,
cause.
okay. Because
For,
if arguing about whether or not it did gets pretty hard, because if we, like, the evidence is there, how we interpret it is different,
okay, but I said
right?
let's for the sake of
Yeah,
argument,
exactly. So yeah,
let's go with the first
yeah.
premise
So yeah, okay. So yeah,
that
so
that's correct.
universe. Now, the universe began to exist. Yeah. So the universe had a cause, and the cause of the universe needs to have certain attributes, right? Like, it needs to be able to make it needs to be it needs to be able to have causative effect outside time. And the only thing that can, and that means that it has to have, like,
Aren't you now putting in a lot more than what the argument
no, see, I'm
says?
not, right? Because this is, um, well, see, no, because it implies, right, like, the universe having a cause means that the cause has to have certain attributes, right? Otherwise, it doesn't fulfill. the requirements to be that cause. See,
But what's your
and one of the
justification? What's your justification for that?
logic, right? Like if something, if if A requires B, and I see A, I am reasonably justified in assuming like that B is also there, right? It's logic, right?
Yes, but
So
B is just a cause.
yeah,
So
of course, but the cause needs attributes, right? Like
how do we
if
get to all the other attributes that
because
you
they
put
need
into to
okay,
the cause?
because we know that the universe has certain attributes that need that imply that its cause has certain attributes. Like for example, we know that time is part of the universe, and time began when the universe began, right? Which means that whatever created the universe also created time, which means that it has to be able to act in the absence of time, right? It means that it doesn't require like what's the word, like temporal
Can,
changes or duration to within which to act, right?
okay,
And
can I make a tiny joke which might be relevant?
okay,
If something is outside of space and time,
yep, mhm,
it it's not made out of matter,
that's right.
so it's immaterial. It's outside of time, so it exists for no time at all. That's pretty much the definition of something that doesn't exist.
Well, that's not quite true. See, it doesn't
It
exist
is.
in well, it doesn't exist for no time. It exists
Some
outside of time, which means that it either never existed or it always existed, right? Which is, why we say that God is eternal, because he existed from eternity. Like, there was never a point.
that's something you assume, that's something you can't know.
Well, no, see, I can't know it in the scientific sense, but I can know it in like the metaphysical, in the logical sense. This is something that I see a lot of atheists do, is that they want to ignore all types of knowledge. They don't want to acknowledge types of knowledge that aren't scientific, right? But there's
Okay.
more than
So
like,
God could just be Eric, the universe creating penguin who dies after he creates a universe.
well, no, because like
He
um
could be.
uh, penguins are something
I
that we
just
like.
I just gave you a possibility that's
Oh, okay.
absolutely viable on the
I mean,
same
you can have it.
grounds
Well,
that you
okay,
assume a God.
like I said. Well, sorry. Let me finish here. Like I said earlier in the conversation, the Kalam cosmological argument and other similar arguments do not give you a specific God. They just kind of they
I go
just
I'd go a step
show
further.
a
They don't give you a God, period.
well. If you accept
They
them as
don't
true, they don't give you. They
even
don't like.
they don't even give you an entity.
They do though. Okay, they do. The
No, they
universe,
don't.
the cause of the universe, needs to have certain attributes, right?
Why?
If you accept like,
Why?
because otherwise it couldn't. Otherwise it couldn't like. Otherwise it couldn't fulfill the requirements of the argument. So if you accept the argument is true, you accept that um
Can I
the thing
can
that it,
I can I
yeah,
can I can I give another example?
this is how logic works. Yeah.
Yeah. I just lighted another cigarette, and for that I use a tiny flint.
Hmm.
Let's say there's a tiny flint somewhere in nature.
Hmm. Yep.
It's been hot for a long time. Everything's dry,
Hmm.
and from a nearby mountain, a rock drops down,
Hmm.
hits the flint. We get a spark, and we get a fire.
Yep.
So now we have a cause for the fire, which is a stone falling down from a mountain.
Hmm.
How is this stone intelligent.
It's not. So this is what you're
Have
saying.
you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen what a fire does?
Yes.
Have you seen? Have you seen the effects
Okay.
of a fire? Have you seen? Have you seen the
Oh yeah.
flames? The beauty
I live. I
of
live in
of the flames. I mean, if
I
there's
live in
no
Australia.
intelligence, if there's no intelligence behind it, then how could a rock cause all of that?
Okay.
See,
See, you're
that's the
talking about.
equivocation that you're making
No, no, it's
when you're
not because
saying you need an intelligence to
no, okay.
cause the universe.
Actually, it's not. See, because the rock and the flint and the flammable material that assumably fuels the fire, all those exist within time, and they are material, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that means, and so I'm talking about something that does not exist within time. So with that, like,
So what existed in the singularity?
what? Well, this like your friend in the chat said, like singularity is very problematic, and we don't know. But that doesn't that's beside the point. To
No, what's not beside the point is what existed in the singularity.
infinite, like we assume infinite, like density. But that's see, it's like it. That's a question for like
You used the very correct word. You assume.
yes, I know,
But
but that
I'm not
it doesn't
asking.
matter.
But I'm not.
It doesn't matter what I assume was in the singularity because that's a particularity of that's a
Well,
particularity of
if you
like of nature, right?
the point I'm trying to make is that if you don't
Mhm.
know what was in the singularity, then how do you know that it would need intelligence to go from a singularity to the universe as we see it
Because
right now?
I know that space and time were created at that point, right? I don't need to know the particularities
And what if
of it
all
to
the
draw a
ingredients
conclusion.
and what if all the ingredients for space and time were part of the singularity?
I'm sure they were,
It just needed a nudge.
but the singularity had to exist in the first place, right? Like we didn't have a singularity for eternity past, right? That would
No.
then explode into the universe. We didn't have that. The singularity came into being as well.
there is no past
Exactly. That's
beyond
right. That's
beyond
right. There
time.
is no past for it to exist in because time began to exist too. So it's
Okay,
you're talking.
can you repeat that sentence?
Okay, sorry.
There is no past to.
There is no past for it to come into being. Right, that's
Okay.
what I said. Yeah.
So
So
in that particular past, you would say
th-
nothing can exist?
no, things can exist just outside of time, right? Time does. So the argument is that so time began to exist. So whatever caused it has to exist outside of time, obviously.
Yeah, but
And
I wasn't going to that. I said in the singularity, if every ingredient was present
yeah,
in the singularity, which we don't know
yeah, we don't.
and
I mean,
could well be,
mhm.
then nothing came into existence because it was already there.
But the singularity itself had to come into existence
How would you know?
because it began to exist.
How would you
We
know
know
that
that, right?
how would you know that it began to exist?
Because that's what it was. It was the beginning.
It was a singularity.
We assume that there was
How long did the singularity exist before it
there
expanded
was
into
no
the
before. There was no concept of a before, right? But we do know that there was a beginning, right? That's what it was. It was a beginning. That's the point here. It was a beginning, and that means that it needed to have a cause, right?
Yes, and it still doesn't get us to any sort of intelligence, just
Well,
a cause.
Yes, that's right. But that's right, right? Then we have to look at that cause and say, okay, what are the attributes that that cause requires in order to bring into existence the
We don't know, and
universe?
we can't know because we
Ah,
we can't see what is outside that singularity. And what is
okay.
outside the singularity is what we call the cosmos. And we can't see into the cosmos. We don't have a clue what it's made out
See,
of.
and this is where we don't.
And we don't have a clue if there's time.
Well, okay, science. Okay, we do
We
actually know that. We know that time came
No,
into
we don't.
existence. Then we do.
Can't
We
go back.
do.
No, no, because you already admitted that we can't go back
Because there is no
to.
before, right? Like we can't go back to before the singularity because before the singularity, in a temporal sense, does not exist, right? Even if we
If
went back to the singularity, we would just be part of it.
Would there be
You
a
know?
possibility that there's another universe besides our universe?
You mean? Oh, you're talking about like the kind of oscillating universe where,
No,
like,
just one universe existing.
alongside
per-
another? Sure, that exists. That's possible.
Okay, is there time in that particular universe?
If it's a universe like ours, yes.
Could it be that our singularity originated from that universe?
Yes, but then that universe needs a
So then,
beginning too.
so now we already have time outside our
Yep.
own
If
universe.
see this and
The fact that
those
we
kind
can't,
of
but we can't know
it's
it,
not
so we can't make a definite claim that that's actually the fact. That's what I'm
okay,
getting at.
right.
And the fact
But,
that we
but
can't
well,
say that there was time for the exact same reason, we can't say that there wasn't because we
okay,
can't look that far.
okay. What you're saying is that the type of knowledge that I'm claiming is impossible, and I do not agree with you, right? And it's very hard to have a conversation if you deny that, the kind of non-scientific but still valid knowledge is impossible. I mean, like this is I'm talking about like like this is metaphysics, right? And
To me,
atheists,
it's just an
atheists, well,
assumption.
it's not
I'm not saying it couldn't exist. I'm
okay. And
saying
I'm saying the fact, like,
there's no evidence that it does exist, and
okay,
there's a big difference between the two.
yeah, it is invalid to claim, sorry, to ask for a type of evidence that cannot be given by definition,
Correct.
yeah, by the definition of like the thing being talked about, and that is what you are doing. You are asking for evidence that is impossible to give categorically,
Okay.
and you
I'm
shouldn't do
I
that. And
okay.
atheists do it all the time.
That's correct. But is it then correct for you to make a claim
Okay,
based based on no knowledge at all?
but it's not no knowledge. See, it's
It
not no
is.
knowledge.
It
It's
is
not.
because
See,
if it were
see,
knowledge,
because it's
then you
not
would have
scientific knowledge. It's not knowledge,
no.
but it is knowledge, right? Like
No, you
these are
don't.
things that we can. It is. It is like otherwise philosophy is pointless. So
Yes. And
yeah, right.
philosophy in this particular situation is pointless because
It's not.
if we
See,
could yes because we could replace your god
yeah.
with my co-host the invisible pink unicorn who as a hobby has creating universes,
Okay.
and she created one,
Okay.
and that's the one we're in right now.
I will. Okay.
And you have enough
Oh,
evidence. You have just the same amount of evidence to refute my claim that I have to refute yours.
okay.
But you
Not
also
exactly. Look, let
have
me.
exactly the same amount of reason
Mhm.
to believe me than I have to believe you.
That's probably too. Well, I doubt we're going to convince each other, but what I'm saying. Okay.
Well, what I'm getting at is how
I think I know what you're getting at.
if you're not able to convince me, how were you able to convince yourself?
Okay. You are assuming that you're a perfectly rational being, and you're not, because you're human, and
I
there's
am.
no well, there's no perfectly rational humans, right? Now, you said that,
There I
you
would
know,
there I would
but
agree.
you're saying that there's no justification from moving from universe has a cause to God, and I'm saying there is. And the reason I say that there is because the attributes that a cause of the universe requires are identical with the attributes of a creator God, right? So,
No, no,
yes, let me
no,
finish. Let me finish.
no.
You could call it whatever else you wanted, right? Like we could call it something else. We could call it creator being, right? And creator being has certain attributes, like, not immaterial, um, timeless, possessing of like free will. So like a person, right? It's a disembodied mind, right? The creator of the universe has to be a
Those are all
disembodied
attributes that you
mind.
add on to
No, it's
a
not adding
call.
on. See, this is right. Yeah, but the cause needs certain attributes, right? Like it's um even if we push it back to, like, if we
It's the
say, okay,
same.
the creation.
It's the same thing that in my domino analogy, we could say that it takes an intelligent being to push over the first domino, and there we could agree on.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
we couldn't agree on the fact that intelligent being pushing over the first domino was omnipotent, was omniscient, was a mind without a body. Those
Okay,
are attributes you cannot justify.
but I can justify them. And okay, let's go.
No, you
Let's.
can't.
Okay, yes, I can.
You
Okay, and
can't.
I'll
Well,
justify. I'll justify children.
justify to me that the intelligent being
Yeah.
pushing over the first domino has to be omniscient.
Okay. Okay. Omniscient. Ugh. Because it's um. All right.
I could set
Omniscient.
up
See, and
the
omniscient's hard
entire.
because.
I could set up the entire domino project that they do here in Holland every
Mm.
uh,
But we're
several
not talking. We're
years.
not talking about. We're talking about dominoes of like
No, no. What?
gigantic. Yeah.
Let me explain. Let me explain. I could set that up. That takes months of work
Hmm.
to set it up.
Hmm.
Then go outside and find someone who's not even aware that we have set all this up in this particular hall, and bring them in blindfolded and have them push with their finger the first domino.
Okay. So the.
That person wouldn't have a clue what was going to happen, so wouldn't have a clue what they actually did, so wouldn't have to be omniscient or omnipotent.
Okay. I'll go into
The
that.
only attribute you would need is someone who could actually move their arm and push over the first domino.
Okay.
That's
The
it.
thing is, yep. Okay. But so the reason that that breaks down is because it's already assuming like a set of non-essential conditions, right? So you're actually adding on things here. So okay, let's go
Yeah, and
omniscience, right?
unless you can demonstrate to me that what we see in the universe wasn't present in the singularity, then you have no reason to assume anything different. And we
But
don't
no, I do.
know
But
what the singular.
I'm not talking about whether or not it was present in the singularity or not, right? I'm talking about the beginning of the singularity.
Yes.
Yes, right? And that, and
And that,
bringing into existence the singularity, or whatever it was at the
okay,
moment of
let's take
creation,
let's take
right?
one
We're looking,
attribute. Let's take one attribute,
yeah,
and that's omniscience. How
yeah.
is omniscience needed in creating a singularity?
Um, see, it's more omniscience is a like, this is what I mean. I'm sure a philosopher will just like face palm at what I'm about to say, but whatever. Omniscience is more of a consequence of of the other attributes, is how I'd see it. Like the like if God is infinitely powerful, right, and is an infinite mind essentially, then that implies omniscience, right? Like if you've got a mind that is infinite, it has all knowledge, right? Like it can work everything out forever because it has that, it has that kind of processing capability.
Why is that needed?
It's not. I'm not saying it's needed. I'm saying it's a consequence of the other attributes. That makes sense. It's
But
like
you
it's
put now.
incidental.
So okay, so now you're putting on an attribute that isn't needed. Why are you
But
putting it?
it's not saying it's not needed. It's a consequence of the other attributes. It's implied, right? So you're picking, like if you pick, say, omnipotence, that would be um a need that would be an attribute that's needed to bring in the universe, because creating the universe is a act of such supreme power that it fits the definition of, like, a being that can bring into existence itself is omnipotent.
Okay, so what you're saying is that in order to create something, you need something that's capable of creating something a billion times more more complex. Is that correct?
No, God isn't necessarily complex. The attributes are
No,
fairly simple.
that's not what I said. You throw in omnipotence.
Yeah.
So the universe is the epitome of what is possible.
I wouldn't. No, there's possibilities that are not contained within this universe. So it's not.
So why would you need a cause that's more potent than the cause that is actually needed?
So, but it's not, right. Like if something can bring into existence itself.
Yes. In order to make a table, do we need a carpenter?
Um,
Or do
if
we
it's
need
made of wood, yes.
or do we need a physics professor who can actually explain to us what the wood's made out of and how it came
Okay.
into being?
You're saying that omnipotence isn't necessary. I'm saying it is, right?
It isn't. It isn't. I just
It is.
demonstrated that it isn't.
But okay, no,
I
you
just
didn't, right? Because
demonstrated to you that it isn't.
I don't think you actually know what omnipotence means.
Omnipotence means that it's capable of making something that goes beyond the universe as we know it.
No, it's not. That's not the definition of the universe. That's not like that's a very weird definition. I'm not sure why you'd use that, right?
If okay, so
Omnipotence,
if the
right?
current universe is the limit, then the
It's not the limit.
cause if
It's there's things that there's
you're not letting me finish. You're not letting me finish. If the universe is the limit,
Mhm.
then the cause is limited.
But there's no reason to
There's
assume
no reason to
that, right?
assume
Like
that we need
if
an omnipotent cause
Okay, so
for
you're using
to cause something that is limited.
I see what you're saying, but there's no reason to like. But your definition of omnipotence is very strange, and it's not the one that's normally used. So, and you can say, "Oh,
So
look, you
what
don't
is
need this omnipotent thing." And I'm
so
saying,
what is omnipotent?
okay, um, like it's like
What's your
uh,
definition? What's your definition of omnipotent?
um, I like it's I suppose bringing into existence a universe. Like if an omnipotent being can bring into existence a universe, it can bring into existence.
That's
Let me
fairly
finish.
limited.
No, if he, like, it's among his capabilities. If someone can bring into existence a universe, they can bring into existence any universe that's logical, right? Like an omnipotent being cannot make a square circle because that doesn't make sense.
Well,
You know?
I already have something that your God cannot do.
Yeah.
Yes,
What?
he's incapable of writing a book or
Well,
creating a book.
I suppose that depends on what you mean by create, but and he probably could, but
If he created the universe, it would be a lot easier for God to come up with a completely finished book than have it written by fallible men who lose the original documents and keep copying and copying and copying it, adding error to error to error every time it's copied.
you assume that, but that's actually not true.
Actually,
So
that is true,
it's
because
not.
the
We
current
have wait, no.
because we have the oldest Bible that we know. If
Mm,
we compare that Bible with the current KJV Bible, there are over 14,000
differences.
differences.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Because you
It
see,
does matter because
no,
it's
no, it
not
doesn't.
it
The
wait,
meaning
wait,
of
it does matter because it's not a that means that the KJV Bible is not
but
a,
okay,
a correct copy.
that doesn't matter, right? And I'll tell you why that doesn't matter. Because the differences you speak of are not like substantive, right? They're not substantial differences,
If I
right? Like
tell you a
if
story,
I, no, no,
if I
no,
tell you
it's
a
not. No,
story,
let me finish.
and I
Let me
no
finish here.
listen, if I tell you a story and I tell you the same story, but I
Yeah,
change 14,000 things in that story, do we still have the same story?
it depends what you mean by. It depends what the differences actually are. So, the much of the Bible is written in Greek, right? And Greek's a very interesting
It
language.
doesn't
It's
depend on what
no,
the
it
differences
does. It
are.
does. It does. Let me finish. Let me. In the
If
right,
I write
I
her,
might tell you the same story, but use
I'll
different
demonstrate it.
words that have the same meaning. It's the
I'll
same story,
demonstrate it.
right?
I'll demonstrate it with one single change in one single
Yeah.
series of books.
Right. Okay. Go
If
on.
I change Harry Potter into Harriet Potter, do we have the same story?
Uh, not exactly, but it's still like, on what level is the story the same? It's like if every other event is the same, right? Then the stories are like
If I change
okay,
two things, if I change Harry Potter into Harriet Potter, and Harriet Potter
but that's not the kind of change that happens.
gets killed in the end by Voldemort, do we still have the same story?
No, we don't. But that's not the kind of change we're talking about,
I
right?
only have
A lot
two
of these
changes. I only have made two changes
okay.
where we have confirmed in the Bible that there are versions that have 14,000 changes. And
That's actually more than that.
that's only the first Bible. That's not
Right.
even
Okay.
going back to the originals because we don't have the originals.
But see, the changes you're talking about are not substantial. If I use two words and they have the same meaning, right? And I can switch those out, that is a difference. But the meaning hasn't changed. And the same thing is like like the reason I brought up Greek is because Greek is, I believe it's called an inflected language, which means that in a sentence, the order of words does not matter, right? Which is, like, which is a big deal, because
But what
in
you're
English,
saying now is that the 14,000 differences is the order of words, and that's not what's
it's it,
actually
it
that's not what's
but it is
actually true.
it's
If
things
if
like that. Like we
if I
have.
okay,
Let me finish. Let me finish.
if I rewrite the Bible and
Mhm.
I just make one change, and that is that I make the change from God to invisible pink unicorn. Do we have a different story?
Um, I mean, if all the descriptions are the same, then what you're doing is you're just swapping out a name. It's like if I was called John instead of Matthew.
No,
That
because
would I just
we now no longer have a God.
well, but we'd have something that's given all the descriptions of a god, right? So
So
it's like,
but I only made one tiny change.
yeah, and it doesn't matter, right? Like this, the if you
What?
change, like, what you're saying, you're playing with language here, and it's really annoying when you do this, right? You're saying
No,
if I change this term to a different term but keep everything else the same, it's different. It's like, no, the term just gets the new meaning that the old term had. That's what changes, right? Now, if you
no, it
then
doesn't.
made, yes, it does. If you
No, it
then
doesn't.
made, it does,
No,
right? Like
no, it doesn't.
if I call
If
a
I make
table a chair, it's still a table, right? In fact, if I describe it in with the same, okay, if I describe it the same way that I do a table, you will know what I'm referring to, even if I insist on calling it a chair for some nonsensical reason, right?
yes, and
And
that's what you're doing,
yeah,
and that's what you're doing with cause. You're calling
no, I'm
it
not. Like,
God. You're calling it God,
yes, because it has the
and
attributes that God would need to
it's
have,
still
and
just
it does. Oh,
a cause, and it is
it's a,
still by a long shot not a God with all the attributes that you put onto that God.
okay.
And if you had a different, and
Omnipotent means
if
being able
you
to.
had
Let
a,
me finish, Peter. Peter, come on,
if
Peter, please.
no, listen, if you
If
had a
yes,
different
please.
religion with a different God, you would add on different attributes.
Well, see, um, but
Because
we're not talking about this.
where do you get your attributes from God from?
Okay, let me just talk about something here. Okay, you say a different religion, different attributes. Well, if the religion was like a monotheistic creator god religion, the attributes would be the same, and we can see that they are the same. Jews also believe that God is omnipotent.
Because they
So do
believe in the,
Muslims, right?
because they believe in this in the same God.
Oh,
That's why we
Allah's
call
not
it
the
the
same
Abraham.
as Allah's not the same as Yahweh.
That's why we call it the Abrahamic
Okay,
God.
that's true. Yes. Now,
It's the same God
if we
in
look at
Judaism as it is in Christianity, as it is in Islam.
Islam's not really the same. Islam actually does have a different description, right? It's true.
Islam says that the Bible is true. The only difference is that Jesus was a prophet and not God himself.
Okay. Now, let's look at a substantially different religion, like Hinduism, right? Hinduism says that the universe is cyclical, and so they don't have a need. Like, there is no. Their definitions of gods are very
Exactly.
different. Yes,
So
but
their
that's not what we're.
cause would be so their
But if
cause for the universe is completely different than yours. So
and
now
that's but
tell me,
that's not what that's not what we're
so
talking about.
no, but now tell me why you are correct and they are wrong.
Because we know the universe isn't cyclical. They also
How do we know this?
Science tells us this. The
Science only gets us microseconds from the Big Bang.
no, but it tells us some other things. Like, for example, um, I don't know who worked it out, but essentially the idea of the oscillating universe, where it goes through cycles of like a big bang, then a big crunch, and another big bang, and another big crunch. Like, on and on.
Yes,
What
we know that
was
that's
yeah?
we know that
What was
that's
this?
not what's
Not
happening. What I'm
yes,
asking
because
is,
we know
how
that's not
do
what's happening. Is
science
because wait,
if
let me
science
finish.
can't go back until microseconds after the Big Bang, how did you go back further and make the positive
Okay,
claim
scientists kind of
that
have in a way like
make the positive claim that the universe isn't cyclical?
it depends what you mean by go back.
That,
See, I don't need to know all the particularities to
no,
draw
you just guess
conclusions. No,
and
it's
then
not
say,
guessing, right?
well,
Like if someone, if I, it's like this. It's like if I sketch out like kind of the big picture. I don't have to draw in every single detail in order to continue drawing out that big picture, right? You were saying that I do. I'm saying that I don't, right? And and I don't like. Um, Scientists have worked out that the reason that the universe is not an oscillating cyclical universe is because entropy is conserved between the cycles, which means that the universe would have kind of run down already. So it's not a cyclical universe, right? So we know that, and that doesn't mean that we have, and we don't to know that we don't have
can
to.
you run that by me
Okay,
again?
okay. So what's been worked out is that an oscillating universe, or a universe that goes through cycles of like Big Bang then Big Crunch, could not produce like our universe, right? Like that's not what our universe is, because in those cycles, like between those cycles, entropy is conserved, right? So entropy, so the the amount of energy that's kind of been dispersed into non-work energy. So what would happen in that kind of universe is that it would reach a point where there would be no stars, no planets, no anything, because all the
How
energy
do you know all of this?
physics, right? Physics. This is what scientists can do, right? They can work out how this works, right? They can with like with maths and stuff. This is what it is, right? Like you seem to think that science works in a very particular way that it doesn't actually work in. We don't need to know the particulars of what happened just after the Big Bang to know that a cyclical universe is impossible, because we have a whole lot of other knowledge that informs us and lets us draw conclusions based on the existing knowledge, right? So we know, entropy in a cyclical universe, entropy will be conserved, which means that it
We
could
have
not be past eternity.
we have someone in the chat who actually can't leave, and that's Tony Doc
Yeah.
Hackenslash. Um, I'm going to throw it out here. Would
Mhm.
you be up for having a conversation with Tony? Because Tony actually knows the science.
I don't know. He probably knows better than I do. I'm just talking about what I've seen and what I've accepted. But yeah, like,
Okay,
am I wrong about? Hey, can you ask
what you
Tony?
have?
Am
Okay,
I wrong about the oscillating universe? Because I'm pretty sure I'm right on that. It's what I've read, and I've never seen anybody saying that that's wrong.
I don't know, but what I do know is that everything Tony
Mhm.
says, he can demonstrate to be true.
Yes, that's because his realm of knowledge is within the realm of um, like it's in the realm of demonstrate it's within the realm of demonstratable, like kind of in a scientific way, knowledge,
Yes.
right?
And what
Now,
other knowledge is there?
there's revealed knowledge, for example. A great example of this is like, okay, if I do something, you don't know why I've done it unless I tell you, right? But once I've told you, you know it, right? It is revealed to you, right? And that's still knowledge. Yeah.
But there's a different way to find out.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Right. That's what I'm saying. That's.
I don't need you to tell me.
What? Wait. What?
I don't need you
What do
to
you mean?
tell me. I can use science.
You can't use science to know exactly why someone did
How,
something like
how do you think murders are solved?
they're not. Yeah, but that's okay. That's a bit like that's a
Do you think that we have enough science to find out who killed someone and
I
find out the find out the motive
okay.
why this person was killed without
Do
even
you think?
getting a single confession.
Well,
That's how science works.
with okay, that's a big
We
difference.
don't need
When we
we
know
don't
that someone has killed someone, we're not trying to get we're not necessarily trying to get evidence of the intent. We're getting evidence of the act, right? We know that we discovered out we discover did they kill this person, and then we say okay, well they did, right? And intent is part of the having a reason for intent is part of the evidence. It's not like it's not the thing that they're trying to discover. They're trying to discover whether the act was in fact taken by the person in
what I'm trying
question.
to get at
Now,
that is that revealed knowledge isn't
yeah,
necessary as long as we have science, because we have a way of finding out without it being revealed.
okay. That's good.
So we have a better method than the revealed knowledge.
Yeah, well,
We can actually
people
demonstrate it. We can
from
actually demonstrate
okay,
it
for
to a
most
point
people, like,
where we can convict people, and in the USA actually can kill them for things
yeah,
that they have done. So
in
we
right,
have a better method than revealed knowledge.
right,
And
with revealed knowledge. Okay,
when it comes down to revealed knowledge,
mm,
if you tell me what you did and why you did it, how would I know if you're telling me the truth?
well, I mean, like trust normally comes into it then.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
and that's trust is
what if I completely trust you and yet you're lying to me?
well, then your trust was misplaced,
Yes.
right? And we
So
think
then
we have
so
to
then
trust
so then
science. We
so
have to
then
trust the
so
justice
then
system
no,
and
no,
things like
listen.
that.
So then
Yeah,
my knowledge, would it still be accurate?
no, but
So
you can investigate
what's the
whether or
value?
not
So
you can
now we need science.
not necessarily not all investigation is science, you know. Um,
Can you name me a way of investigating that isn't science? That isn't scientific?
like okay, if I
It's a
tell
simple it's a
if I
sim it's a
if I tell you that there is like a food on
it's a simple question. You made a claim. We don't need
okay,
science.
yeah,
All I'm asking for, if we don't need science, can you name me one way of investigating that isn't scientific?
okay, if I go if okay, if
If
someone
there's
tells you that there's like something there's like some bread in your kitchen, right? And you go and check, you go and you look in your kitchen and you find bread. You have confirmed that there is bread in your kitchen,
yes,
but that's not scientific,
yes,
right?
of
You have
course
not.
it's scientific.
That's a very broad definition of science.
No, it isn't.
Mm. No,
It
I don't know about
isn't.
that. I mean, it's what you've done. What you've done is definitely a component of lots of science, but that doesn't make it like
It is by definition the scientific method acting and
yeah,
what I'm actually doing is an experiment. You claim there's bread in the kitchen, so I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to go to the kitchen, go to the place that you pointed out, and see if there's actually bread there. That is the scientific method.
yeah. It's like you're
It's
kind
the
of
most simple.
you're kind of explaining. Sorry,
It's the simplest form maybe, but that's by definition the scientific method.
You seem to be saying that like inductive logic and things like that
No, it's
are
the scientific
identical.
method. What do you do if you cross the street? Do you look if there's traffic coming?
But people wouldn't say that doesn't. What you're saying is that
That's the science.
everybody is
That's
this.
the scientific method that you use in order to cross the street safely.
That's such a broad definition of like the
Yes, but
scientific method.
science is that broad. That's what I'm trying to
Yes,
get at.
it,
And it is
it,
science is the only method we have to determine reality.
oh,
We
see,
don't
no,
ha-
like it's
we don't
that's
have a
wrong.
different we don't have a
Like
different method.
we don't see, when you go and check on like if there's bread in the kitchen or you cross the street, you don't form a hypothesis. You don't like
Actually, I
you
do.
well that's a very broad definition of hypothesis, right?
Yeah.
Like science, if you like
If
if you
if
told a scientist that
I cross the street, I make the hypothesis. I can cross the street. If there's traffic coming, I could be run over.
hmm,
When I get run over, I could be severely injured. So my hypothesis is that before I cross the street, I look if there's traffic coming. If there's traffic coming, I'll wait. If there's a moment when there's no traffic coming, I will cross the street and I will
hmm,
reach the opposite side safely without getting run over. That's my hypothesis. Now I can go
this
out and test it.
uh
And when I go out and
like
test it and it works, now I have a working theory.
well no, you see that's not really like
What we
a
need now,
science
what
like a
we
science.
what we need
That's
now
not science. It's
no,
science.
listen. What we
Okay.
need now, from getting to a working theory, is getting to expanding on our theory, so we can perform tests. And
What te-
because we have empathy, we don't push people in front of trucks to see what happens. So we use crash test dummies, and
yeah,
we let those cross the
that's
street, and at a moment
oh.
that a truck is coming, so we can go as far as we want. That is by definition the scientific method. And you may not like it that simple things as going to the kitchen looking for bread is a scientific way of finding out whether or not there's bread in the kitchen, but it's still the scientific way to
It's
determine whether or not there's bread in the kitchen.
it's not it's an evidence based way, but evidence isn't like evidence is not identical with science. So
No, science is a method to get evidence.
kind of it's not
Not kind
really
of.
that
It
it's not
is.
it is see science is a way of explaining observed phenomena. You know, you observe something and then you've got to and then you construct a hypothesis that explains the
And you go
observation
look for
and then
evidence, and you go look for
yes
evidence that backs up your hypothesis.
yes that's right and in and if you
And
don't find
that's what
any or if you
what
find
I'm
contradiction
doing. And that's what
yeah
I'm
but no
doing
see
when I go to the kitchen
you're
and go
basically what you were saying. You're using a reductionistic
bread.
example of science. What you were saying is that the science part is only like is basically only the test and the confirmation, but it's not. It's the observation and
Yes.
and
Well, I did say
hypothesis construction. When
that's
I
what I
tell
said.
you that there's like say bread in the kitchen, right? You will right. You haven't observed the bread. You're going to go and check it, right? What you're doing is you're checking to see if evidence if reality corresponds with my description of it.
Yes.
That's now scientific.
And I can
Sorry, the
go
scientific
further,
method.
and I can go further
The
and further.
scientific method is
I can open up the bag and see if what's inside is actually bread. Then
yeah.
I can uh, determine whether or not the material that's inside the bag is actually bread.
Yeah, so
then I can
that's
go and take a sample of that and bring it to a lab and see if it's made out of the same components that bread's made out of.
yep.
That is the scientific method. That is how we determine reality.
See, okay, so what you but the thing is that means that people were doing science forever.
Yes, they were.
I don't think scientists would agree with you on that, and I don't think well, philosophers of science certainly wouldn't
We have
agree
we
with
have
you.
one we have one we have
It's
one in the chat. We have one in the chat right now that I consider to be a scientist. He might not have a PhD, but at least he has the brains.
okay. Well,
And and
changing
and
like
and several and
using a
several
definition of the scientific
and
method
several
that's
and
broad
several
is
and
not
several
useful.
scientists will confirm that he has the brains, and he's
Okay,
agreeing
I'm
with it. What I'm describing is the scientific method, period. And we
yeah, but
don't
it's
have. Tell me a method other than the scientific method that we use to determine reality.
so is what you've described as the scientific method
Yes,
is so broad that it encompasses so
it
many
is.
things. Yeah,
It is.
yeah, yeah. It's that it encompasses so many things that are
Yes,
not normally um
it has
would
different.
not
It has.
normally fall under the umbrella of science,
They do.
right?
They do. They're different tools to get to use in different experiments.
Science uses many tools. That doesn't mean that they tools are identical with it, right?
I know,
Okay,
but
okay.
it doesn't rule.
How do you know that?
But it
Okay,
doesn't rule out the tools I just described.
it doesn't. But I'm saying that not everything that looks like science is science, right? Like there's people who
What looks like science and isn't science?
cargo cults. No, okay. Let's move to a different. I think this will be.
Cargo cults
Let
isn't
me
science.
finish. Sorry, let me try to move this to a question that I can ask you that I think will be more productive. How do you know that science is true? How do you know that it works?
Because it's demonstrable, testable.
Right? Okay. So say that you had someone who right. Okay.
Say I conduct an experiment.
Wait,
I write it. I write
see,
down my experiment and I write down my findings. I write down
okay.
what I started
How do
out
you know
with,
that? How do you know that
and as
demonstrations
listen,
and
listen. I am not
let me
finished
finish.
yet. I write everything down. That's what's called a scientific paper. Then I present
Yeah, I
that
get
to
that.
other scientists who will have one job, and that is to prove me wrong. And
Oh,
that's what we call peer review.
I well,
Peer review is not peer
I've
review.
actually I've got to bring you up on that because peer. Unfortunately, I have some friends. One of my friends, really good friend of mine, is a psychologist, and you might have heard of the what we call the crisis of what is it? Uh, the words in my mind like the crisis of like confirmation. But basically, in psychology and in certain other fields, what's happened is that people have tried to replicate the result of an experiment, and they haven't been able to, right? And they've done this to things that were supposedly peer reviewed. Now, I know this is more of an example
this
of
is okay. Wait a minute. This is too
yeah.
vague.
Okay,
They have tried to replicate an experiment. That doesn't
yeah.
get me anywhere. What experiment?
It just
Who
I don't
tried
need to give you
it?
particular.
Who tried it? Where can I find the papers? Because as I said, knowledge is demonstrable. If that what you're telling me now is actually a fact, then I can go look it up.
Um, the replication crisis. You can look it up. Um, basically. So you can Google the replication crisis, and it's a
Well,
methodological
you,
crisis in
you seem
science.
to know it. What experiment did they try to replicate?
This isn't just the reason it's a crisis is because it's more than one experiment. Right, it's many.
Name one.
Okay. Why do I need to name one? This is something that it's been widely reported on. Do you not trust this?
I don't trust it until I get at least one experiment that we're talking about. If there are many, then it should be very easy.
Okay, I'm trying to find it. There's a lot of places that are talking about replication, but without like referencing a specific one. This is slightly beside the point. You can look like anybody listening to this can go and look up the replication crisis themselves. Now, what I really want to ask you is, like, when you go and you check on, like, you try to check things, you try to reproduce tests and all that. How do you know that how do you know that that retesting should give you the same results? How do you know that there is consistency in
You don't.
the universe?
That's why you have.
You don't.
That's why you have.
Right.
That's why you have.
But if you were no. I'm saying that if you were
That's why you have. That's why you have peer review.
No.
If
Let me finish. I'm sorry. I've explained my question badly. That's not what I'm asking. Right. I'm asking this. Like, one of the assumptions of science is that if you do two things exactly the same, you get the same result. Yeah, that's part of science, right?
Yes.
That assumption. Okay, how do you prove that assumption?
Tony just looked it up, I think. He says there's a crisis in psychology with some issues in medicine. It doesn't apply in this discussion.
Okay, it does. But I'm saying, my point there was that peer review is not infallible. But that's the point.
And at least I think I could come up with some kind of case where you couldn't replicate it if it is in psychology, and it is about certain problems of a certain individual. That's something that you cannot replicate.
Yeah, totally.
I agree.
Now that's now, but my question here is, like,
but
science relies on certain assumptions, right? And it can't prove those assumptions because it rests upon them. But you assume that they are true.
Wrong.
Right? You assume, yeah. No, you do.
No,
you
wrong.
Assume that, yeah. No, you do. You science, a lot of science.
Name me one assumption that science is resting on.
Maths and consistency. I'll give you two there.
Don't you think we have confirmed mass and consistency?
Well, I mean, I believe science works, so I say yes, right? But, like, I'll quote Albert Einstein. The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible, right? It is not essential that the universe be nicely ordered as it is, right? It is possible for a type of universe to exist.
I don't see what this has to do with an assumption.
I'll get to this. I'll get to that. This is something
I asked for an assumption, not going off on a tangent about Einstein. What is an assumption that science is leaning on that we can't be sure of?
Well, I mean, but see, we didn't come up with science. We weren't born with science, right? We didn't. We had to invent it. We had to invent science, right? Yes.
You're not answering the question. I'm just asking.
I am answering the question. I can't give you a yes or no answer to this kind of question, right?
No.
Science.
I just asked you what name one assumption that science is leaning on that we can't confirm.
Like consistency, like the kind of, or we can't confirm. We can't confirm it with science, right? Because if you use, so science leans on the assumption that the universe is like rationally consistent. You can't use science to prove that because that's circular reasoning. You're using a method that assumes rational consistency to prove rational consistency, right? You can't do that.
First of all, I don't understand it, and as long as I don't understand it, I don't agree with it.
Well, okay. When you do science, you're assuming that the universe works in a way that is kind of deterministic and like mechanistic, right?
How did we determine that?
I'm not saying I'm saying science rests upon that assumption.
I would disagree.
But how could you disagree with that? It's like science assumes
because what we know about the universe and what we now know to be real is what we know by doing science.
Yeah, and I'm saying, but science assumes that the universe, the universe obeys certain rules. It assumes this. It can't prove it, right? You can't prove.
We can test. We can test. We can test. We can test for.
Like this is like Descartes' thing. It's like, how do I know that I'm not being like deceived by a demon that just creates this illusion that I think is reality, right? It's Descartes' thing, right? You can't prove that scientifically because it could still be the demon, right?
Yes.
So,
but it wouldn't. But it wouldn't matter. What you're talking about is the brain in the vat idea, and that wouldn't matter, because even if we are a brain in a vat, we still have to deal. We still have to deal with the reality that we find ourselves in.
That's true, and it's a basic assumption.
So it wouldn't make a difference. And I think I have a fair explanation that I'm not a brain in the vat. Because when I look at, for instance, the music that Beethoven made, I can't write music.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure someone else did. When I look at the universe and when I look at the different galaxies and at how the universe is made up, I'm pretty sure I can't create that, and I'm fairly creative, but I would never have been able to come up with something like the universe. So I at least have some definite clues that I'm not a brain in a vat and that there's something else outside my own mind.
Well, scientists still haven't answered the question of whether or not we're in a simulation. I've seen some that say that maybe we are.
We are veering further and further away.
I'm trying to bring it back
from my original question, and that is, what other method than the scientific method do we have to determine reality? Because I'm not aware of any. And as far as I know, everyone I know isn't aware of any.
It depends. The way you've defined.
I haven't defined
science.
I haven't defined science. We as a society have defined science. Science is a vast amount of methods we use to determine reality, and it is the only working way to determine.
Let me ask you a question.
What you're going back to all the time is attacking what we determine to be science. I asked you for a method other than science.
I'll ask you something.
That we use to determine reality, and that's a question
in pre-scientific. No, let me finish. In pre-scientific, in pre-scientific cultures, How did they determine reality?
Can you name me one pre-scientific
Pre-scientific.
culture?
Let's go. I can name several, but let's pick a good one. Let's go. Native Americans.
Okay.
They're pre-scientific.
How did they hunt?
How did they determine reality?
How did they hunt?
See, this is what I mean. Like what you were saying is
No, you were
saying that
talking about a pre-scientific civilization.
how do they hunt? Well, they go and they find an animal and they kill it with spears or bows or whatever.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So how did they create spears?
They sharpen sticks.
Using the scientific method.
Oh my God. This is what I mean. Like, no historian would call them a scientific culture, but you were saying that they...
Do you think at some point they were throwing a stick at an animal and then found out that if now they had a broken stick with a sharp point and they hit it in just the correct way, the sharp point would penetrate the skin and kill the animal, and then use that observation to eventually come up with a spear?
Probably. Yeah.
So they're not pre-scientific, right?
But they are, right? Like they don't have a method, right?
They're not.
What they were
using,
as science.
What they were using was the scientific method. Someone found out that a sharp stick would penetrate skin. Maybe by accident. Maybe by accident.
If you look at
they've used the scientific method.
Peter, come on. By your definition, there is no other method of knowledge because you have defined science to include everything. So we're not going to get anywhere in the discussion if you continue to do this.
I'll go back further. Let's say they didn't have spears.
Okay,
let's say they didn't have spears,
Peter,
and they didn't.
Is logic scientific?
No, listen to me. Let's say they didn't have spears. Did they have rivers?
Rivers, yeah.
Do you think they had the knowledge that if you go into a river and you can't swim, then you'll drown?
Yeah. Well,
what method did they use to determine that going into a river, not being able to swim, and you'll drown?
Watching other people drowning, presumably.
That's the scientific method.
No, it's not.
Okay. Yes, it's making observations.
The explanation.
Observations are part of the scientific method.
I figured it out. All that is connecting cause and effects. That's logic, right? Logic is used in science.
Making observations is part of science.
It's part of science. It is not science itself.
No.
Right?
Okay.
It's not. It is. It's not. Like this is. Wow.
I don't need a pair of scales to look at something.
No, you don't. Right?
So
that's not what I'm saying.
A pair of scales is part of the scientific method, but I don't use it in this experiment. That doesn't make me making an observation not a part of the scientific method. I don't have to use every single method for every single test.
That's not what I'm saying you do. So what they observed, let's go with the river example. They observed that when you go into a river, you drown. So they connected cause and effect. That's logic. Yeah?
No, that's a scientific method.
Okay, so fine. So logic is the same as the scientific method. I actually can't argue with this.
Logic in this case is part of the scientific method.
Yeah. So you're putting everything under the definition of science, and I'm saying, well, I mean,
no, I'm putting everything that makes up science in science.
And that's a really weird, like that's a strange thing to do.
No, that's not a strange thing to
Yeah,
do.
everything.
Because
Okay, if
because if
the
have you have you
the
seen
whole is not the
have you seen a nut and a bolt?
yeah. If
Okay.
you put them together, yeah.
So
Okay, what I'm saying is a nut and a bolt.
let's say I have a car, let's say I have a car.
Yeah,
Do you think that there are nuts and bolts on a car?
yeah, there are.
Does a nut and a bolt make up a car?
They're part of the car. Yeah.
So are observations part of science.
Yes, but the thing is, if I have a nut
It
and a bolt,
is not
I don't
science.
no, let me
It,
finish. Yeah. If I have a
it
nut
is
and a
not
bolt, I don't
science.
have a car. I just have a nut and a bolt. And what I'm saying is, if you have
Yes, but
observations and logic, you don't
but you have
have
part of a
science.
car.
You have part
You
of the
have
car. You
part.
don't have the car,
You
right?
have,
You don't have the car in its hold.
no,
And that's what I'm saying. Like
correct.
science was not like science is a way that we use these kind of mental tools and other tools together, right? That's why we call it a method.
And what I'm
But
still waiting
those
for
let me
if
finish. Those
is
tools already
you presenting a different method than science to determine reality. And
okay,
every time I ask this, all you do is attack the scientific method.
yeah, and the reason I'm attacking it,
That won't get us to an answer.
yeah, and see the reason I'm attacking your question because I know that you um that you are putting like you are equating the composition of science
No, you made a
with
claim. You made a
science
claim
itself.
that we can gain knowledge without using the scientific method.
Yeah, but
And all I wanted
any
to do, since you made that claim, is
okay,
ask you for the method we use
okay,
other than the scientific
okay,
method
fine.
to determine whether or not that is actually real.
Okay, logic is a way of determining knowledge.
Yes.
Yes, good. There we go.
Okay.
Yeah,
By
and that's not necessarily.
by using logic, only logic,
Yeah,
tell me that a television is real.
that's like
By using logic only.
okay. I won't use logic. I'll
Should
use my senses. I see a television.
Now you're using the
Therefore, it's real.
scientific method because you're making observations. I told you only
No, it's not.
use logic.
I'm not. I'm
No,
simply
no,
making an
use
observation. I'm not
logic.
invoking the scientific method.
Use logic, period. Don't use anything else. Use logic. You
But
just told
that's
me
not within. That's
you
not
just told
within the realm of science, right? Like you gave me you gave me the example that is that is something I would use observation for, and so I told you I would
Okay,
use
what part of reality can we determine by only using logic?
like think about that for a sec. Um, I'm not
Exactly.
sure. I like it's like you can use logic to disprove claims. That's what it's like. It's pretty good at that. That's what I normally see it.
That's not what I asked.
Okay. Here's one. Here's one. So logic can be used. So here's a logical truth.
no, listen, you
No,
claimed that we can use logic to determine reality. I ask you for one example
I told
where
you I'd have to have a think, right? I need to formulate a thing in my mind, right, to speak it. So, okay, what's something that we can determine with logic? Well, let's see, it's going to form this. So,
the answer is simple, it's nothing.
but it's not nothing, right? So logic is
Can you
useful
use?
for
Can you
let me
use?
finish. Let me
Can
finish. For
can you use?
okay.
I can make this
Logic,
very. I can make this very short. Can you use logic
yeah.
on anything without making an observation first?
Well, I mean,
No.
no, but thing is,
The
that doesn't make
answer
it.
is the
It
answer
doesn't
is
make it
no.
science. Like this is the thing. Like, and so you need to address this. What you are saying is that all uses of observation are science. They're
I just
not.
disproved your
Then,
claim. I just
but no.
disproved your
Okay,
claim.
if I can make a
You
logic, okay,
can't use
there are
logic.
logic. Are there
You
logical
can't.
truths? Are there logical truths?
There are logical truths. What
Yes.
I
Then there's a
asked
way
you,
of knowing
but
things
that's
that
not what
aren't
I asked.
scientific.
That's not what I asked you. I asked you to use logic to prove to me that something is real.
Okay, that's not what it. That's not what it does, right? Like
No, it isn't. Because to determine whether or not something is real, we use the scientific method
we
and
use
not
our
logic.
senses. Our senses are not the same
Our
as the scientific
senses
method.
are what we use to use the scientific method.
Yeah, but that's like, but that doesn't mean that using them is identical with the scientific method.
Tell me how you can make an observation without using your eyes.
I can use my ears, but that's not the point. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that
Is that an observation?
yeah, so sensory observations are not the same as the scientific method, right? It's in the name. It's a method. It's more
Okay.
than just using the tools.
And can you get to a reasonable, real conclusion by just using your ears?
Sure. If I listen to a bird, if I hear bird song, I can think, that is bird song
Oh,
because I've heard bird song before,
you just made my day.
right?
You
Like,
live in you live in Australia, right?
yes.
Familiar with the lyrebird?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Okay. Just use your ears.
Oh,
Did I make my point now? Or
yeah, but
do I now get a video of a lyrebird making exactly the same sound as a photo camera, making exactly the same sound as a car alarm?
oh man, yeah. Like, I see what
So
you're saying, but that's
are we so now by just using your ears, did you determine reality or did you just made a huge mistake?
but did I? But that's not. Lyrebirds aren't that common. I can go and I can look at tape. I can go and look.
I don't care if they're common or not.
It doesn't. But see, this is the thing. You're saying that observations are identical with the scientific method. I'm saying that they're not, because the scientific method is a method
No, they're not
of using
identical. They're not.
observations.
That's not
Yeah.
what I said. I said they're part of the scientific method. That's a
Yes, that's
completely
right.
different thing.
Yeah, and but the thing is, if I determine, okay, if I
I
look,
even
if I,
told you the analogy of the nut and the bolt in the car.
yeah, I get that, right? Like,
I
okay,
made
so,
the exact opposite claim.
so we're arguing past each other. I think, like, if I look at,
Yes, because
I've got a chair
we
here.
still
I
don't have
look at
a
it,
method. We still don't have a method other than the scientific method.
Peter. This conversation will go nowhere because we cannot agree, because your definition of the scientific method is not the same as mine, right? And I will not change mine, because I believe the scientific method is a method of using our senses and logic and mathematics and tools, right, to determine reality. That's what it is.
Okay.
That does not.
Tony
As you,
Tony asked me to point out the chat, and
yeah,
that's what I'm going to do now.
yeah,
Falsification is knowledge, and yes, it's logically derived, but you
yeah.
still need observations to plug in.
That's right.
All empirically derived knowledge is science.
Okay.
And
yeah,
all sense derived information is observation.
so when
Is
you read something in a book,
hearing is an observation.
yeah, but when you read something in a book, you do not observe it. You read it, right, and you receive that knowledge, right? Someone else has observed it, right? But your way of knowing it
What
isn't
we are
scientific.
getting at, and Tony said, I think almost an hour ago, that he was going to
Yeah.
leave and he can't leave, and I know exactly why he can't leave. And he just made my point. It doesn't require use of all of them to constitute science, and
I know.
that's where you
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it
you
does.
and that's
I'm
where
saying
you go wrong. That's where you
I'm
go
not. I'm
wrong,
not saying it
because
does.
what you're
Like,
doing is taking parts of the scientific method and then
yeah.
claiming that's not the scientific method. And I agree,
Good. So
but
we agree.
it is still part of the
And
scientific
I agree
method.
too. This is the thing that, like, okay,
And what I asked you for is something other than the scientific method. So something other than the parts of the scientific
okay, I
method
can't
that
give you one, right? Like, I can't. Okay, apart from received knowledge, I can't think of one, right?
because
But
we don't have another method. You can't even name the other method. Shouldn't that be a
apart from
clue?
received knowledge, we can't. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, apart from received knowledge, there isn't one, right? But the thing is, I don't call the parts of the scientific method, right? Like, I call logic, and observations, observations. And then if you combine them and you use those two together, then, you have the scientific method, right?
Okay, name me something that isn't part of the scientific method that we use to determine reality.
Revealed knowledge.
What is revealed knowledge?
Okay. Revealed knowledge is something like, when you read something in a book, right, the knowledge is being revealed to you from the book.
That's making an
right?
observation, right?
No, it's not, because you're not observing what the book is describing. You're observing the book and you're reading it.
Okay, so we're observing, right?
Yes. I mean,
And
not really. We're not actually observing.
we're reading text, right?
Yeah, but we're not observing what the text describes. We're just observing the text.
How did we make text?
We
What you
arbitrarily,
describe?
actually. Text was just made arbitrarily. Like, there's no reason.
What you are describing is going back to the scientific method. You said revealed knowledge. How do you reveal knowledge?
Usually with language.
Is language part of the scientific method?
It's one of its, what would you say? It's one of its axioms. You require language for the scientific method.
Okay, and we were looking for something that isn't part of the scientific method, right?
But, I mean, but language exists apart from the scientific method. Like, you can have language without having the scientific method.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? So, as far as I'm concerned, there's
the moment you're going to use it, then
right,
we
like,
then we get to the scientific part, because then we're exchanging information. Exchanging information, I think, is part of the scientific method.
Okay, so look, if we use your question, like, your question was something that's like not the scientific method.
What I'm pointing out to you, and what we're constantly arriving at, is that you don't have a different method than the scientific.
It is okay. No, it is. It is a different method
to determine.
Come on,
determine reality.
Peter, see, the scientific method is a composite, right? I told you something that is used within it, but it is not the same as the composite.
No, and I already showed you that the revealed knowledge isn't trustworthy because you could be lying to me.
Yeah, but it's the
So what
science
I
isn't like science isn't always right either. Like sometimes
Science isn't always
sometimes
right either, but science would be the only way to find out whether or not you're lying to me. So we're still back to science to define whether or not
okay,
the revealed knowledge that you shared with me is actually real.
it doesn't matter though. But okay, that's a different question though.
So where does
That's a
that
different
so
question,
where
Peter.
does that leave revealed knowledge? It leaves us nowhere because we have no way of
Sure it
determining.
does. Because
So
look,
we have
just because you
no
say
way.
that revealed knowledge can be falsified doesn't mean that revealed knowledge is invalid,
It is.
right? It's not.
Everything that can be falsified is invalid.
But that doesn't make sense. Like falsification is one of the criteria that we use for science, right? Because an unfalsifiable theory isn't scientific.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. So just because something can be falsified doesn't mean that it will be falsified. And that doesn't mean that it's categorically invalid. Yeah.
I still don't see how attacking the scientific method over and over again
I'm I'm not
is giving me the answer to the simple question that I asked. What other method is there?
I look, I'm not. I told you methods that are part of the scientific method, and you saying, ah,
It's exactly the same as a
you asked
young.
for a method that's not the scientific
It's
method, right?
exactly the same as a young Earth creationist attacking evolution
Like, I mean,
and not
I
ex
love
and not
science, right? But I
explaining
don't think that everything I do with science, like,
and not
no, it's like,
explaining
Peter, come
creation.
on, come on, come on, man. This is really frustrating for both of us, right?
It
Like,
is.
it is,
It
right? So
is.
what I am saying is that the components of the scientific method are not identical with the method because it's a method. It's the way you use it,
And
right?
that's not what I
And
claimed. So why keep repeating this?
I mean, I don't know why you because I don't know. Like, what are we doing? What are we even doing here? Like, that's what I've said. That was my answer, right? So that's the
Yes.
answer. Like, can we move on?
Yes, because now we at least we have
Good.
so now we at least we have determined that other than the scientific method, there's nothing that we have
But
to
that's not.
determine
But
reality.
that's not what I said. Like, this is what we keep. This is what we keep coming back to, right? Like I say
Well,
this, and then you.
then give
But
me
I
the
just did.
method you
Like,
use.
Peter, come on, come on. I just told you. Like I just told you something. You agreed with me, and then you said some, and then you made a claim which was not my claim,
Which
right?
was
Which was that there's nothing apart from the scientific method for determining reality.
okay.
Yeah,
So what
that was not what I said,
so
and what
what
I
other
said you
so
agreed
what
with.
we're
Man, come
back to the
on.
same question. What other method is there?
I just like no. You see, oh, dude, no. You agreed with me that the components of science are not the same as
I
science.
agreed. What I'm asking for is what is your other method?
I told you them. I've told you, right?
Revealed knowledge.
Revealed knowledge, logic, and observation are all parts of the scientific method. Yes? Yeah? But well,
Um,
not okay. These things that are part of the scientific method.
I'd say revealed logic, revealed knowledge is nonsense until the scientific method confirms that it's actually reality.
Right? Okay. Oh, that doesn't mean that. Oh man. Like, okay. When you do like when effectively to most people, science is revealed.
I have revealed to you that my partner on this
Mm,
channel is an
yeah.
invisible pink unicorn.
Yeah.
Okay, that's revealed knowledge. Is it
Yep. That's
reality?
right. Well, I assume so. Like,
You assume.
yeah, I assume
You really?
assumptions. We need assumptions, right? Like, we actually need.
You really think that my partner is a pink invisible
Oh no!
unicorn
So,
now?
so you told me that that's what they refer to themselves as, right? Like, I assume that's that's their name, like or like username. That's what I mean. That's what I thought you meant. The username is
the moment she will be on this channel, she will be the invisible pink unicorn.
That's not what I'm saying, man. Come on. Oh, jeez.
That's her revealed knowledge.
That's
And
who
the
you
only
said.
other
Okay.
and the only other thing you'll have a tiny observation to go with it.
Oh,
I'm not revealing that yet. People have to find out when they see us going on video. But actually, it will be visible that she's there, but she'll be invisible.
Oh man, like
I pulled off a pretty neat trick to do that.
whatever. It's oh man, come on.
But does this make her an invisible pink unicorn now?
No, it doesn't. Right?
Because
Like
that's
this
revealed
is not
knowledge.
what like.
Okay.
You've given an example you've given an example of something that's like
Give me
not
an
true,
example.
right?
Give me an example of revealed knowledge that's actually real, and that I don't need science for to determine whether or not it's real.
See, okay. If you observe something, is it science?
Yes.
Okay, fine. There's nothing apart from science that's a way of confirming anything. I'm just going to like concede this because we will never get anywhere in this conversation because your definition of science is so broad and I can't change your mind.
Give me, and that.
No. We are moving on from this part of the conversation, man. I'm actually really sick of it because we've been doing this for I don't know, like at least half an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, come on. Like your definition of science is so broad that it includes like all form. It basically includes like all forms of knowledge.
We can.
I don't want.
We can do two things, Matt.
Yeah.
We've been at this. I'll have to look for a very long time. As far as I can see, we've been at this now for nearly 2 hours. I think it's more.
Yep.
But that's what YouTube tells me. 3 hours.
Yeah.
I would like to end the conversation here, and I'd be happy to continue the conversation at Doc Hackenslash tells me it's 3 at a different time, and leave this behind and go to maybe something you have in revealed knowledge that we can work with.
What I'd really like to discuss is
listen. Don't share it with me. Don't share it with me.
Yeah.
What I usually do is when I have a guest on, I offer them a second conversation. In that second conversation, my guest gets to determine the topic, but they don't tell me until we go live. Until we are actually live, because I don't want to prepare for the conversation. I want to have the exact same conditions that you had today.
Sure. All right.
Let's say we give it a week at least. Then you have the opportunity to revisit this conversation. You can listen to it if you want. Then come up with a topic that you want to present me with, and we'll have a completely different conversation, your topic, and you're going to be the moderator of that particular conversation.
All right, cool.
We're going to switch roles.
Sure.
Is that
sorry
fair?
We got stuck. Yeah, I'm sorry we got stuck on this. From what it really seems to be, it's like we basically
for what it's worth. If for me it was quite enjoyable because I had to use my brain in a way that I usually don't do in this sort of conversations.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It was a bit frustrating for me because
Tony just threw in a question in in the chat. He wants to join next time. I want to make a better suggestion.
Yeah.
Because I'm just a guy with a computer who thinks he knows certain things. Tony actually knows what he's talking about. What I would like to do is invite you and Tony in a conversation. I'll moderate if necessary. If it's not necessary, I'll just shut up and enjoy the ride, because Tony could make you think better than I could, and Tony has a better way of explaining stuff. And it would, at least for you, be a way to take away something from the conversation that you can't take away from this one.
Yeah. Can I, like, to me, this conversation was essentially, we got stuck on definitions. And
yes.
We did, and we didn't like move on to anything like really substantial, and that was kind of annoying.
I'm not exactly. You made me think about stuff that I usually don't think of and usually just take for granted. So for me, at least, it was a nice brain exercise, and which is part of the reasons why I do stuff like this. And it was also what I remind from last time. But last time we didn't get anywhere either. But we had a terrific conversation. That's what I took away from it. And that's why I was.
Yeah, I did enjoy our last conversation. I don't think we got as stuck. I remember at one point we talked about the Kalam cosmological argument a lot, and then we didn't, like, we kind of just reached an impasse, and then we moved on.
Yeah.
Here we just kind of reached an impasse and didn't move on.
Yeah,
that's the impression.
Okay, so let's take a week, and then you come back with a topic that you want to grill me on. I'll be happy. Tony will have your Twitter name, so Tony can get in touch with you. I'd be happy to host a conversation between the two of you, because Tony has been a guest on our channel more often. So I'd be happy to host it. And if Tony wants to have his own channel and do it on his own, I'd be happy to join in the chat. So it would be an incredible conversation. I can tell you that, at least. So
we can work it out.
Want to end here?
Yeah, sure. Let's end it here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to do it again. Hopefully we'll get a bit further next time.
Well, as I said, I've enjoyed this one, and I had my brain gymnastics in the way that I hoped for. So Tony just agreed. He said on your channel is fine, so we'll set it up.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I think Tony's the only one left in the chat at the moment. So Tony, thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, I think the conversation probably got a bit frustrating for everybody else as well. Like,
oh well, not for everybody else, because Tony told he was going to bed an hour ago, and he's still around. So he said it was fun, if frustrating. So at least he had fun.
All right.
And I know if Tony said he had fun, there'll at least be a couple of people more who will enjoy the conversation. So everyone who made it this far, thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel. Matt, thanks for coming on, and I'm very looking forward to the next time that we meet.
Yep. See you next time.
Okay, so bye everyone. I'm going to shut it down, and we'll talk a little bit after we turned it off live. Thanks everyone for listening. See you next time.